Recording in progress.
Is it?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So welcome to West Haven's City Council meeting. Today is August 3rd, 2022. It's a little after 6 o'clock. We want to welcome everyone here from from all around West Haven and those that are visiting as well. We appreciate you being here. We have Ms. Green, our city recorder here. We have Mr. Jensen, our city manager. We have Ms. Hughie, our attorney, and we have Ms. Philpin, our community development director. We're glad to have them here. And we also have representation from our Weber County Sheriff's Office. Thank you for being here. And we have a lot of citizens here we're glad that you're here tonight. We also have all of our council members should be available. Is council member Schwab on? So he's fulfilling some duties that's out of state tonight. So he'll be joining us via Zoom and be participating that way. So we're glad to have our council here as well. We'll go ahead and move forward, and I'll call this meeting to order. My name's Rob Vanderwood, the mayor of West Haven, and we're anxious to get started. We have a very full agenda, and we'll move forward with that agenda as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure that we cover everything appropriately tonight. So also, as we move down in the agenda, down towards, looks like item 15, we'll be having an executive session during that time. So when we get down to that point, if you're still here, that will be a time that we'll resume into a different room and to hold some different types of meetings that'll just be in private to discuss some things that are of importance there. So that doesn't happen very often, but just wanted to let you know what was going on with that. We'll get started with our opening ceremonies. We'll start out with our Pledge of Allegiance. That'll be by Councilmember Call, and our prayer or moment of silence by Councilmember Saunders.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're so grateful to be gathered here. We're grateful for so many of our citizens to be here with us tonight. We're grateful for the city of West Haven and its employees and the hard work that they provide. We're grateful for this country that we live in and the freedoms that we enjoy. We're so grateful for this beautiful area and grateful for the moisture that we've received recently, and ask that we may continue to receive more to meet the needs that we have in this area. We ask a special blessing to be with us tonight and to guide our thoughts and our decisions. And we ask these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Councilmember Colin Saunders. We appreciate that for our opening exercises. We'll move on to item number 3, our public presentation. This is for residents attending this meeting. They will be allotted 2 minutes to express a concern or ask a question about any issue that is not on the agenda. No action can or will be taken on any issues with involvement with anything that's on the agenda. I know we have a lot of residents here today from Possible Green Farms. This is an area because we'll be discussing this tonight. It would be something I'm sure you're here to listen. But if there's anyone else that would like to come up and have a discussion on any item that is not on the agenda, you're welcome to come up at this time. State your name and your address.
Other people could have talked, you know. Jeff Reed, whoa,
4427 West, 3750 South. I'm sorry I'm up here. I don't want to be up here. I doubt that my neighbors want to be here. I can't talk anything about anything on the agenda, so I'll talk about my favorite subject, me. I consider myself to be a man of honor. I consider myself to be truthful. I stand by my word. I think Councilmember Saunders saw that when I made a commitment to work on a committee, I busted my butt. I'm old-fashioned. I still keep an agreement with a handshake, and I believe in holding to my commitments as long as I possibly can. What you see out here is a community, not just a community of homes, it's a community of people. We have a master mailing list with telephone numbers and emails, and everybody out here knows that they can call me 24 hours a day, and I'll be there to help them. All we're asking from you guys tonight is to be part of our community like we're part of yours. I talked to former Mayor Sharon Bolos last week on Thursday night, and she confirmed what I already knew, which is when she signed a document on May 2nd, 2017, she intended for this city to take over a large parcel of land in our community. And I just want you guys to stay with that original document and do what it was intended to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reed. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
I'm Marilyn Weaver, and I'm only doing this because I promised Jeff that I would. I live at 4429 West.
Talk in your mic there.
4429 West, 3800 South, in the infamous Nielsen Green Farms neighborhood. And since I can't speak to any of the agenda items, what I'd like to do is just have everybody here stand who's from Green Farm. If everybody from Green Farm could stand. I think this is an unusual presence at your meetings. I don't come often, but I believe it is. I just want you to know that my neighbors and I are very concerned about some of the items on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward on here. Our next item on here is item 4. It's our action on consent agenda. Our first one on here, item A, would be for city council minutes held on July 20th, 2022. We're going to skip item B on here and move to item C, which will be Olympus Constructors. That's for $1,034,892. Item D on here is for Weber County Sheriff at $240,142. And that's what we have for our action agenda items. Any further discussion on these items?
I would move to approve consent agenda items A, C, and D.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay.
Just a note, the number B, as the motion has been removed, and I would ask for some further consideration. So we're in full support of not having that on for approval tonight.
Okay, thank you. I think, is there any other discussion on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and do a roll call on that. Councilmember Call?
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon?
Aye.
Councilmember Morse?
Aye.
And Councilmember Schwab?
Aye.
Okay, looks like the consent agenda passed and is ready to move forward. We'll get that taken care of. Item number 5 on the agenda is action on Planning Commission meeting recommendations. The very first one on here in item A is action on ordinance 15-2022-2022 for a rezone from R2.5 to mixed use at 2457 West, 3300 South. And it has the parcel number listed on here. And if we have a representative, Ms. Fippen, would you like to come up and talk to us about that so she can inform the council on what took place?
Just to clarify, the planning commission did look at this at their meeting last week. Sometimes there's questions when planning commission recommends denial on why it goes to the city council. Because the council is the legislative body and ultimately is the one that makes the decision. That's why there's an actual ordinance in your packet, and that's why it's before you, even though with one commissioner absent, the planning commission did recommend against it. Other than that, I don't really have anything to add beyond what's in my staff report. This is a request that does not comply with the general plan. The concept that was submitted with it does not meet the requirements of the mixed use zone. And like I said in my staff report, while there may be occasions where an application comes with compelling reasons for the planning commission and council to approve or allow a developer to move forward with something that doesn't 100% comply with the general plan, I, as staff and also the planning commission, don't feel that this is a situation. And that's why staff recommended against the rezone, and the planning commission recommended against it as well.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a representative from that's here? I don't see one here. Okay, has the council been able to look through this and come up with an idea of a direction?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to deny ordinance 15, 2022, the rezone from R2.5 to mixed use at 2457 West, 3300 South for Brody Calder.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to thank Sherry, Ms. Pippin, for your staff report. It was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much on that. Moving to item B, action on ordinance 16-2022 for home occupation ordinance. Is that something? Yes. It had you just stay up here.
So in your packet are two copies of the home occupation ordinance. One is the clean copy with the vesting language for the ordinance. And then another is a red line copy, which may be really red and a little difficult to read through. This was on the list of items that I was given to work on when I started with the city. There were some inconsistencies. There were some contradictions in the existing ordinance. There were issues with parked versus stored that in a previous situation caused a denial of a home occupation to be overturned by the administrative hearing officer. And so as we went through this with the planning commission, in my staff report, because there are so many red lines in consolidating and removing and simplifying some things, my staff report includes the highlights, the substantive changes. One of the things is it removes the ability to conduct automobiles sales as a business in a residential area. Of course, that doesn't preclude residents from being able to sell their own cars, but anything that rises to the level of what would require a dealer's license, which is actually only 3 cars in a calendar year, if you're selling it as a business. Anything that requires licensure through the state tax commission would no longer be allowed in neighborhoods in residentially zoned areas. It imposes a minimum lot size for any type of motor vehicle service or repair. The planning commission kind of went back and forth a little bit on this, and they feel that there are larger lots in the city where that may be appropriate, but certainly in more dense neighborhoods, they felt that this should be prohibited in an effort to preserve the residential character of the neighborhood. With the exception of automobile service and repair. Another thing with automobile service and repair, it expands the definition of what constitutes that, because historically it's been somewhat limited to cars and similar things like that, but it expands the definition of that to include things like off-highway vehicles and basically anything that's considered any type of a vehicle as defined in state code. So with the exception of automobile service and repair, it focuses the ordinance on the impact of the home occupation rather than what the home occupation actually is. Because, I mean, they obviously still have to comply with all federal, state, local laws, sexually oriented business regulations, that kind of thing. But it focuses on the impact rather than the business itself. It sets conditions related to chemical storage, nuisances, and traffic, which are actually enforceable. Because right now, the way the ordinance on the books is written is in order to enforce some of the provisions, the code enforcement officer would have to have daily visits for anywhere from, I think it's 30 days related to chemical storage. And there's phrases like which may or which are likely to. And one of the things we have to get away from in our ordinances is having really subjective language with stuff like that. And so this removes a lot of that language and puts it in terms that are not only enforceable for the city, but also defendable if it ever gets to the point where we would have to take someone to court over something. It actually provides a pathway for a larger number of residents to obtain a home occupation license without having to have planning commission review what they're doing. Like, say, for example, someone wants to teach piano lessons. It provides a pathway that says if the home occupation meets these certain conditions, then it is a permitted use, and they can just come in and get licensed for it. We are limited with the state on when we can require a permit or a license with home-based businesses. We can only require them in cases where the combined impact of all the different parts of it is greater than the impact of just a normal residence with, the standard number of cars coming and going. And so I think that setting those circumstances where if it meets those, I think it's 5 or 6 things, then they can just come in and get the license. In any event, it doesn't do away with the ability of the Planning Commission to pull somebody in if there's issues with their home occupation license. That is still in there, but this simplifies the process. It removes the inconsistencies that exist in our ordinance. It sets enforceable standards. And like I said, it opens up the ability for a larger number of residents to just come in and get a license without having to go through Planning Commission.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
On, I guess, item 3B, where it says on lots less than 1 acre, I'm just wondering, has there been any discussion on, as far as on service repair type businesses, increasing that to a larger amount? We have a lot of 1 acre lots in the city that are generally intended for residential purposes, it seems like.
Yeah.
And so my concern is, I've heard from citizens that, on past businesses that have been allowed, that's a real nuisance, it's an eyesore, and
Yeah.
on and on and on. And I'm wondering if, and maybe this is a question for council, if there's any discussion or desire to increase that on that particular item. If we were to leave it the way it is, the other thing I would suggest is that we say 1 acre on lots 1 acre or less, because we kind of, on the next item, we say lots greater than 1 acre. So I guess if somebody had an exact 1 acre, they might not fit into either category.
As far as the lot size, when I first drafted this, the revisions and presented it to the planning commission, I actually did recommend a larger minimum lot size to be able to do vehicle repair and things like that. And they actually came down to 1 acre because there are a lot of lots in ag zoned areas that are right at 1 acre. So that's what they came down to, but my original recommendation was larger
Did
than
they
that.
count that as a full acre or just like a
What?
construction acre of a 0.92?
It's whatever the legal lot size is. If it's not 43,560, it's not.
So I had a question on that one as well, but I guess my question might be a little bit opposite of yours. Can you explain to me why we would allow people on 1 acre to do this type of work, but not people who live on less than 1 acre?
Generally on 1 acre lots, there's wider frontages. It's not as dense. There's greater spacing between neighborhoods. So the impact on say a neighborhood that's patio homes is going to be significantly greater than on a neighborhood that's 1 acre lots, because you've got, 4 or 5 homes in a patio home zone where you'd have maybe 2. So it has to do with the proximity of homes and neighbors to the business.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's been issues regarding parking. So
Yeah.
like with some of these people who've been repairing, they'll bring multiple vehicles. And so if it's less than 1 acre, it creates an issue with parking, where they're going to put them. And even though we tell them, hey, it has to be parked on the property, there's still been issues over them parking it like on the street.
So wouldn't it make sense then if we wanted to encourage residents to have home occupations, and if we didn't want to overregulate people, that we would maybe allow that as a conditional use and have them come into the planning commission to get conditions
The problem
so that they could?
face, do you want me to answer that or should?
Sorry, are you talking about on under an acre or over
On
an acre?
under an acre.
We've
The
had problems.
the difficulty I have with that is, at some point, I think you do need to set a minimum lot size when they're allowed and when they're not going to be allowed. Because unless there is substantial evidence that it's going to present a detrimental impact, if it's a conditional use, you can't deny it. And picking and I think you have to have a minimum lot size where you're going to cut off and say, this is where it's allowed, this is where it's not. Because if someone on a 20,000 square foot lot comes in and wants to do it, and the planning commission says okay, and then someone on a 6,000 square foot lot comes in and wants to do it, you have to have very, very specific reasons why you would deny it. It can't be, we think it's going to cause an impact. It can't be, you have to be really careful with regulating parking on a public street. You have to have a cutoff somewhere.
I think that's understandable, but I don't think I'm talking about 6,000 square foot lots anyway. I mean, we have people all over the city that live on much larger lots than that don't meet the 1 acre requirement. They might be 0.92 or they might be 0.75. And I hate to deny them something, but the neighbor across the street gets the same thing and it has the same impact on the city because the neighbor across the street lives on an acre.
So there's been a couple of businesses that have come in that have caused issues because of noise. So the smaller lots, the noise carries easier, so you have noise issues. You have people coming and going at all hours because even though we've said this is when it's going to be, we've had problems with them actually conducting the business during those
Right, but don't
times.
we have the right then to pull that permit because we set conditions and they're not following those conditions?
We do. The problem is trying to set the conditions to begin with to anticipate the issues
Right.
down the road. And we've just noticed with the number of home occupations that have come in regarding the, like the auto repair, that
Right.
there's been some, like the same problems existing over and over again, but they're less the bigger the lot is. The bigger the lot is, we don't have the same kind of issues. The neighbors don't have the same kind of problems because the lot's significantly bigger, so you don't have the parking problems, or the noise issues aren't as big because the houses aren't sitting as close. So somebody can be out working in their shop in the back, and the neighbor, next door isn't necessarily gonna notice because the lot is bigger.
Right.
So, this is just my opinion, but I think, Nina, to your point, when we're down to the acre, there's a lot of people that are right on that line.
Right.
So that's, I think, another reason why for this type of home occupation, that the lot size should be increased, because you have a lot less residential areas that would, fall into that. And I mean, the primary use is the residential area, right? People typically don't want to move in and have a car repair shop next to them and have cars stored everywhere and engines out of it,
Of course.
And the other thing is, Amy brought up the noise. I think a larger lot would significantly reduce that. I don't see anything in the conditions about noise. I don't know if we could add a C about noise, or if we have somewhere in the ordinance that kind of covers noise. I didn't see that. And that would be under 4, where I would recommend it, adding a C.
It speaks to noise on number 2I.
There are things in there about having to comply with the nuisance. There's items outlined in 64042. The questions that the planning commission would consider in looking at any home occupation that may be a conditional use.
Councilmember Morse, do you have a recommendation that you'd like to present to the council, or?
Could I give an example?
Yes, Councilmember Schwab.
Some of you know where I live, and on my street, I have a very long, narrow lot. I'm 1.2 acres. The neighbors directly across the street are 0.9 acres, and they have much wider frontage because they're a square lot. And I think it would be unfair for me, having greater than an acre, again, to have more rights than the neighbor across the street who has a giant yard to begin with as well. So I guess I concur with maybe reducing the size of that on here.
Thank you, Councilmember Schwab. I interrupted Councilmember Morse because I know you're remote. So please, go ahead. Sorry.
I think my recommendation would be to make that a conditional use and add conditions to the use if it's smaller than an acre. I mean, we just talked about 2I speaks to noise in that it says, will the business produce or be likely to produce noise, odors, dust, or smoke that extends beyond the property? If it's producing noise that extends beyond the property, then that speaks to that issue, in my opinion.
So we have a recommendation for a smaller lot. Do you have a size estimate or something you'd like to?
But Nina,
put
if you
out
make
there?
it conditional, like they said,
I know it becomes a permitted use. I mean, we've had this discussion multiple times about how a conditional use becomes a permitted use, but if the conditions are fairly airtight and we have the ability to remove that permit, then I don't see why we would. I mean, Councilmember Swap gave an excellent example of his neighbor having much more space to do something like that than he has. yet he's got the bigger yard. And so we're drawing this hard line, and it's leaving people out who I feel are probably have better properties for that type of business, whereas maybe others don't.
Just a thought. The Planning Commission has sat through a number of these public hearings regarding like the auto sale and servicing, and they've had conditions. The Planning Commission has put conditions on these, and it can be anything like, well, they have to operate with their garage door shut, but then their windows are open. There's been, there's stuff like that we can't necessarily anticipate with some of these conditions because people have been rather creative in getting around the conditions, and we've had problems with neighbor complaints because of it. And there was some discussion about whether or not to even have it allowed at all because of the issues that we've experienced in the Planning Commission level with those public hearings and the neighbors. But a lot of the planning commissioners said, well, we know people who actually are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're operating a good business, and they're operating it in a manner that's not messing with their neighbors. So those are just the things that, with those conditions, I don't know whether or not you can come up with airtight conditions because people are awfully creative.
Another thing that I would point out regarding setting a minimum lot size on it, there are several other ordinances in this city where we set a minimum lot size for animals is one. If somebody has 29,500 square feet on their lot in a zone and their next door neighbor has 30,500, the difference of 1,000 square feet, one person can have a horse and one can't. So there are other ordinances where we set minimum lot sizes before you have certain property rights.
One other item, I don't know if you want to discuss that further, but I noticed on the required conditions, it talks about under number 5, all business-related vehicles must be parked behind the front plane of the home in a garage or on a paved surface and not on the street. So I understand the purpose of that. I'm wondering, does that cover, in your mind, a corner lot or is that only the front of the home? Do you see what I'm saying? There might be a home that has the side of the home and, can they park them out on the side of their lot if they're on a corner?
The way it's written right now, they would, whatever the front plane would be, if it's the street runs this side, if they parked behind the front plane, they could park on the side. So,
I'm thinking of an
the way it's written right
issue,
now.
a specific issue in the city where there's a pretty significant eyesore to the neighbors, and he's on a corner lot. So I'm wondering if we could tighten that up a little bit.
If they were parked out beyond that on the side along the corner, then that would actually be really easy to enforce because they would be creating a sightline issue. And then that would be, that would happen. That's just a parking thing regardless of whether the vehicle's related.
Yeah, I'm just saying if the intent is to keep the vehicles at the back of the house, but then we don't address it on the side of the house, they can have it.
As long as it's behind the front plane of the home, they could park it in the side setback area.
Are you suggesting that maybe you add in like a 5A regarding corner lots?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what the specific language would look like, but that's what I would suggest.
Does the council have any comment on that?
So,
That'd be a benefit.
just to follow up, we do have commercial zones, and I feel like, this is just one type of business that's been a real big issue in the city, and so I think we do need to have some kind of minimum lot size. That's my personal opinion.
Amy, going back to what you said about the conditional use permits, when these homeowners, business owners violate their terms of the conditional use permit, are we not removing those permits?
It's been a little bit hard to do that. It's been a couple of different reasons, just because the one that was a huge problem, we lost the appeal because the conditions were not precise enough to be able to enforce, like, the problems that were occurring.
Parked versus stored.
Yeah, parked versus stored. What was the homeowner's vehicles versus what are his vehicle, what the other vehicles, there were some, what's the difference between parked versus stored? Our appeals officer, there was issues so it's been a little tricky. There's been some times when Dan's been able to go out and just resolve the issue. Neighbors complained and he's been able to go out and talk to the business owner. So we really haven't had a whole bunch of issues that way. We've had more complaints regarding this repair type of stuff, but it's been a little bit tricky because they've just been in the gray area with some stuff. So with having the conditions, when I say that people have gotten creative enough that we've had a really hard time being able to look at revoking.
So what are the complaints typically with these type of businesses?
Noise, too much parking, what they're doing with fumes, what they're doing with hazardous chemicals, like if they're doing oil changes and stuff, what are they, how are they
Test driving things up and down the street.
Yep, test driving stuff up and down the street. One gentleman wanted to have sales, and he had an actual license from the state, which means that he was allowed to have a big sign out on his property too. So the neighbors weren't happy with having a very large sign and having that traffic coming in. He was supposed to be only doing it part-time. He ended up quitting his job and doing it full-time. And so now you have a full-time thing at the house, a repair shop at the house versus wouldn't it have been better suited in the commercial area? Those are some of the issues. I mean, it's just a policy question as to what you guys want to allow in a residential versus not. But those are the complaints that we've heard from in the public hearings.
So to that, Amy, I recall that emissions was another issue for that particular person.
Yeah.
And I think emissions is a big deal because it's a quick 15-minute turnaround and you can have a lineup out the street as well. I'm not one to restrict rights wrenching on cars, but I think emissions is something that makes it a little more tough as well.
I mean, doing the emission test, they can't have the garage door closed. They need to have the ventilation. So that creates the problem too of the noise. So those are just the issues that the Planning Commission has experienced. And they've gone back and forth. What do we do with these businesses? We don't want to restrict people being able to work out of their houses, but especially with the smaller lots, that's where there seems to be more complaints because of everybody's closer.
Isn't that particular business in an A1 subdivision?
There's been at least 3 that have been a problem. There's one that is an A1, because don't they live just down the street from one of the planning commissioners?
I'd have to look at the address. I've got the file
The
on
one
my
I'm
desk.
thinking
but
of,
don't
you're
know
right.
the address off the top of my head.
Councilmember Swap, it is A1.
Yeah.
But there's been other people who've been really good about following, the conditions. So that's why it's a policy decision. But I just want to let you know that those were the issues that the Planning Commission had seen, and they were going back and forth. Do we ban it completely or do we allow something?
So it looks like we have a discussion a little bit about just size of lot, or if there's any other issues. I know we had a parking on the corner type situation. Is there anything else we need to bring up on this?
Ryan was talking about being parked in the garage or behind the plane of the house, and it talks about paved hard surface. Would that be gravel? Do we have to have a hard line? I mean, I don't have concrete all the way to my backyard, and according to this, I couldn't put a vehicle in my backyard because it is gravel. We have a,
The concern with that is if somebody brings in a car to work on and it's leaking oil or like leaking other fluids and stuff, if you don't require it to be parked on a hard surface while it's sitting there waiting to be worked on, then there's the potential for groundwater contamination.
but can't that also just require that they have to keep something underneath it so that doesn't happen?
We could change that to say as long as like it's a non-porous surface, like as long as any potential contaminants can't leak down through it. I don't have a problem with that.
I find it limiting to be on concrete or asphalt, I guess.
No, I think I see your point, because this isn't, I mean, this says all business-related vehicles. It's not always going to be vehicles that are being worked on. It could be a trailer that they use for their business.
So I'm wondering if, it seems like there's a lot of questions about this in the,
Would it be better to table and come
That's-
back with work session, with like a work session on it to discuss?
Does the council feel like they have enough questions they want to table it this time?
Well, I think if we're adding language to it, we certainly need to table it, because I think we'd want to see what that language looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask an additional question there, Mayor?
Yes.
Sherry, I might just be misinterpreting. On 1B, it talks about the business employs no more than one employee who does not live at the residence. And then we go down to 3A, it talks about if there's more than 5 non-resident employees, that it's not allowed. So what's the 2 to 4 range on employees? How does that work out?
So the idea behind that is section 1, that's the part that's designed to open it up to more residents where they don't have to go through the planning commission. They could just come in and get a home occupation license. And then the jump to 5, the idea behind that is if their business is busy enough and productive enough and successful enough that they have more than 5 employees that regularly come and go, then it's kind of exceeded the boundaries of what should be a home occupation. Between like 2, 3, 4 employees, 5, even 5, you can still have it as a home occupation. But beyond 5, that's the number that the planning commission felt was the point where you've probably exceeded a home occupation. So
Also there on 3A, it uses the term non-resident, and I know the intent is residing at that dwelling, but it can be interpreted if there was, 6 employees that lived in West Haven and 2 in Roy, the West Haven ones don't count towards that line item. I don't know if that language should be changed just slightly to say they don't reside there.
I felt the same way, Councilmember Swap.
hadn't even thought of that, but I can change it so it's more clear.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so it does look like we have some things that we need to go over. I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we table ordinance 16-2022 home occupation ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
If council members want to send me their
One
questions.
second. Did Councilmember Swap, did I hear from you?
Aye.
Thank you.
I apologize, Mayor. I was just going to say, if council members want to send me their questions or anything like that, so that when this comes back, whether it's work session or on the agenda, I can give you guys more information on them, that would be helpful.
Agree with that. Thank you. Thanks for your time on this. Sorry it was a little bit long, but I think we got some things at least accomplished on that to get taken care of. We move on to item number 6. This is for a ratification of a purchase of a 2022 Chevy Silverado in the amount of $34,867. And I'm not sure if we have anybody that needs a discussion on this, or we.
Just for public records, Mayor, I'd just like to comment. This was approved in the 22-23 budget. This is the replacement for the irrigation truck that went down with the engine issue. This was, we'd budgeted for it. This one was available on a quick turnaround, so we authorized the signature of the contract. This is to ratify it because quite honestly, we should have had it as an approved bill at the last meeting, and we didn't. And we needed to make purchase of it so we could do it. So a check has been cut, but where it is under the budgeted amount, we felt comfortable in doing that, and ask the apologies of the council, and just to maintain coordination and such, we'd ask the council to ratify the purchase.
So just a quick question. How do you ratify? Is that a vote? Is that just a vote to ratify?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion?
What was the original budgeted amount?
Oh, I did not pull that
It was
up.
55,000,
So I thought, thank you.
and then we had a possible bed. Is a bed being added to that too?
Yes.
Okay, I think that was about 12,000, wasn't it? Okay,
We're actually looking at about $9,000 under the budget because this one became available.
okay. Any further discussion on anything? I'm ready for a motion.
I move that we ratify the purchase of the 2022 Chevy Silverado in the amount of $34,867.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion at all? All right, we'll do a roll call on this. Councilmember Dixon?
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
Councilmember Call?
Aye.
Councilmember Morse?
Aye.
Councilmember Swap?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. Guess you got a truck coming. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on here, and we'll get you up here. This is a presentation of West Haven Days post-event reconciliation by Mr. Brock Randall.
I brought some reinforcements.
Yes, you did.
That's a good group of reinforcements.
It is. It is. Matt asked that we come in to give a little recap on the event. Highly successful event at West Haven Days. And I did ask Colleen Hunter and James Jensen to come in. They handle 2 major portions for the event. I'm going to pass out a document while they talk a little bit about the event as a whole and just give a brief recap.
You don't want to go? Ladies first? Come on, you go. There she goes.
I wanted to share some of the responses we got from our vendors. Excuse me. Tanya Rodriguez, this was her first year with West Haven Days, and she was the vendor with Los Chorros del Norte. And she wanted to say, thank you for everything. This is one of the most organized events that we have been. And she posted that on the West Haven City site. And when she did that, it prompted some more comments from other residents regarding the great pictures that were taken, the great parade, how well organized it was. It was fun to watch the children having fun, and great participation from the community. Idlewise Bakery, this was their first, really their first official event. Matt and Camille Garlick own Idlewise. She did this out of her home. She had pastries and breads that she does out of her home. And so West Haven Days was their initiation, I guess. And they said, thank you for the work you put into West Haven Days. We learned a lot and had a good experience. Then they asked for an estimation on how many people were that attended the festivities on Saturday, and I forwarded that information that I received from Brock to them, and they said, we will be back. Brazilian Paradise, this was their first event with us also. And Jake Daniels, he and his wife own it, and he says West Haven Days was such a fun event and huge success all around. Thank you for everything. We will definitely be back. Hearing them say that it's so gratifying because it lets us know that our team did a great job. Those of you who've been to West Haven Days for many years know and are familiar with Rico's Tacos Locos. They've been with us for a very long time. And in all the years that I've been enjoying doing the vendors with Brock, Jesus and Wendy have never, the only thing they've done is they've done a verbal appreciation. They've never put anything into writing. This year, our dear friends did. They said, thank you for a great event. We appreciate you having us. This event is always well organized and fun event that we look forward to every year. Thank you again for having us. And that was signed the Madrigal family. Brock received an email from a young boy, his name's Mason, and this was their 5th year with being with us. Mason's mom, Carrie, had been her mother's caregiver, and a month before West Haven Days, her mother passed away. And during all of these things that were drawing Carrie away, she neglected to put an application in for West Haven Days. Mason, in his words, it says, it is our favorite show to attend, and she, his mom, is quite devastated we didn't sign up in time. Is there any way I could pay double the vendor fee or possibly become a sponsor and pay whatever it may take to get us in the show? We just want to be a part of your event. I don't mean to bug you. With my mom, Carrie, I just can't help but try for her. Brock and I had decided that we weren't going to be taking any more applications, but the application was still on the site. And so we were happy to have the Hat Lady back this year. These were written comments. There were several that were relayed to me Friday and Saturday from our vendors. I was thanked many times throughout Friday and Saturday for their opportunity to be with us. I was told countless times how they appreciate no complications, no red tape, no hoops to jump through. And they wanted to know how we did it and made it so enjoyable for them. And my answer was that the event is orchestrated and managed by people who love it. Brock and his crew, the events committee, they put their hearts into West Haven Days, whether it be the car show, the quilt show, vendors, the rodeo. Everyone involved puts their whole heart into it to make sure that this event is a success, and I truly believe that it is. When you have people with such positive attitudes with the same goal, then beautiful things happen, and I think that's what happened this year. Again, that doesn't mean there weren't hiccups. There were. But they were dealt with promptly, and I think that our vendors overall were happy. I know that we have many that are coming back, and I heard last week that our logistics on the vendors is going to be changing, which will allow more vendors to come in. I'm so excited for that because we had some that we had to turn away because we were full. We just didn't have the space for them. So if we can change it, that will be great. I am so grateful to be a part of this wonderful event, and I'm grateful for the people that I work with that make it such an enjoyable experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I should have gone first. She's hard to follow.
Yeah.
Nice job, Colleen.
Tough act to follow.
That's a tough act to follow.
Come on, James, you can do it.
And you got to
Anyway.
cry a little. Okay, there you go.
I got to hurry, right? The car show this year, I took this over 5 years ago. This from Rob, and he tutelaged me. How's that go? Correct words? Very well. This year we set a record, 500 cars. And just for And I know for all the citizens in the city, they'll be very helpful and thankful for this. It runs in the black. I always tease Brock that one day when I retire, I want a sign. I get a city parking spot once. Just for the money we bring back to the city. This is self-funded, and all the sponsors, that's because they love this show. So we don't have any money come outside the city, and we actually give money back. One year we bought trees for the park and whatnot. The sponsors are very excited to help out. I'm voted number 3 this year in the city and the state for car shows, which is, I'm pretty excited. You know, most people don't celebrate number 3, but I do. We're behind Peach Days, which is hard to compete. Imagine beating Peach Days, what it would take to do that? You might have to build a bigger city or a bigger park. But anyway, this year we had a really good event, and we thank the city for letting us have the burnout contest. We had lots of different array of vehicles. I always try to portray, I had 35 different people helping me this year to help, and we try to make it fun. And one of the people requirements to be on the team is to be happy and to be positive, right? Because I love West Haven. I don't get paid for this, right, Brock? We tease them a lot, but I don't get paid, and it takes a lot of time to collect money and get people happy and get the requirements taken care of. So again, we turned money back this year, and we like to put that money we had left over. We had Brock probably going to talk about that towards a purchase of some bleachers, portable bleachers for the city we can use for other events. But I think a lot of the customer base, especially like John Watson, they love the show. They would be willing to participate and give more money next year. If we had actually goal of something, maybe some bleachers or maybe a bigger tent or something for some shade or running cold water. Anyway, and I don't want to ramble because I know you guys' time's limited, so we'll let Brock take over. And also Brock and the committee has been a good help, and we try to not stress them out too much.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll be brief as I know you have a long meeting ahead of you. But again, the committee was fantastic this year, and she's right. They really put their whole heart and soul in, and that does include the city staff, City Hall. You know, they're not at the event, but so many logistics going into it. It's a big team here, and everybody's involved in that. Right up to Matt, who is our boss, helping us with logistics. And so, in my position, that's very gratifying, and I'm very grateful for that. You have a reconciliation chart here that kind of goes through and it talks about the expenses, the revenues, and then the final. So you can kind of see in the bold, you can maybe browse that later, but in the bottom there you can see the expenses and then what we received in, and then the takeaway from that as far as our totals on the final. So it's successful that way. And I gotta find the other sheet. The second sheet that you have there, we do a debrief as a staff, and we also do a debrief with the events committee. Most of the time those coincide. There's a little bit, with the staff, it's a lot more logistical type items. There's a list of some of those, and again, we don't need to go through those bullet point by bullet point. But there's just a little bit of the stuff that we would like to try to work through going forward. Like Colleen said, anytime you're putting 5,000 people in the park at the same time, there's going to be some issues. There's going to be parking. There's always things, but we try to keep those things small. We try not to sweat the small stuff. We notice it a lot more than other people do. But it was highly successful. There's a lot of comments. Colleen shared a few of them. I know James received a lot. Everybody that's involved in the committee has an experience from the event that represented West Haven very well. There are always going to be a few bumps, but that's what we do. We go through, we put it on. We don't have a ginormous staff, but we handle the bumps in the road as we go, and then we work to try to make them just a little bit better for the future. We learned that monsoons are very real in a short time, and so you'll notice there's some bullet points on there to try to help with that. But for lack of time, is there anything or any questions that you do have through any of those bullet points or anything on the front that you'd like to address or like me to address?
Oh, so when you say designated chair for dinner, you mean a chairman for the dinner, or you
Yes.
want a designated
yeah.
chair?
And actually, we might have found one at our last meeting. He showed
Awesome.
up and he gave a recommendation, and most of the time, that's what makes you a chair of an event.
Okay, I was
So-
just like, okay.
No, they seemed very positive for it, had some great ideas, and they were kind of all in, so we're going to kind of firm that up. But that was one thing. That was kind of a little bit my fault. I didn't have anybody in charge of that, so we just kind of took that on, and when we had a little bit of weather come in, it kind of stretched us pretty thin, and we
Just
had
a
some
bit,
rollover from the
just
youth
a bit
rodeo.
of weather.
Yeah. Anything else?
I just want to say thank you. It was awesome. I just heard so many good comments about it. People coming for the first time, actually, the first time they've been to West Haven Days. So I heard the fireworks were amazing. I wasn't there, but thank you and Matt for all of the work that your staff has done, and especially our volunteers who we love.
Do you know, Brock, how many used the shuttle? You have numbers on that?
So we did keep count with the shuttle, and we had over 300 people using the shuttle between Friday and Saturday night. It's a small thing, but overwhelmingly the responses as we got from it was they're like, this is an awesome idea, keep doing it. It is a significant expense that we had on here. One of the things we're looking at on there is to right-size the shuttles. We wanted to make sure it was serviceable. And so we'd probably reduce shuttle service a little bit on Friday night, and then reduce it a little on Saturday, where we have fewer buses during the day, but still have 4 shuttles come right after the fireworks. And we think we can get that price lower, and then advertise and have some additional signage there at the park, particularly for the out-of-town residents that come in. We had a lot of people walking in like, what is this? And invariably they were from out of West Haven, so they didn't get the flyer, the program, and probably not on the West Haven residents page and the city page, so they didn't see the shuttle information. So there's a lot of lessons learned from it. We serviced 300, and that got probably 100 or so cars off the lot, and so we think it's something we should really consider for next year with a little bit more advertising and logistical thought on it.
I just want to add, this is the first year that I've served on the events committee. Thank you to the mayor who assigned me to that. And I want to say to Colleen and James, and I wish the rest of the events committee was here. I can understand why Colleen gets emotional, because she has so much passion for what she does for the events committee. I see it in your work, and I see it in James's work, and I see it in everybody else's work. And I can't thank you enough for everything that you put into this. I don't think people understand that this starts months and months and months ahead, and you work on it constantly, and you work to improve it every single year. And I just commend you for that. And I love that you have made friends with all of the people who are vendors or are sponsors. And I appreciate both of you and the rest of the committee for just really being ambassadors for the city. I appreciate that, and just thank you so much for the work that you've done.
Yeah, overall, it is a thankless job. You work extra hard trying to get things done. Been there, done that. I'm a little disappointed that I didn't win the stick horse race trophy. I put a lot of effort into that. These kids, I don't know how they beat me out, but they did. But
I think you even cheated and still lost.
I may
so
have cheated
that.
a little bit. I think overall it's really, we appreciate the time and effort that's put into it. I think the idea behind having this put together, this is the first time I think we've actually done this as a city, put all the numbers together to find out what we're going to do. We want input from the community to find out if these events are working for you, if you're happy with them, what can we do to make things a little bit better? We're working on trying to work on our events committee and strengthen our events committee so more people are involved within the city. It's great if you got a few people planning everything and working it, but have more people involved and make sure that the events are community worthy and they're worth the time and effort put into them. So I do appreciate everything that the city has done on this and also what we can do to try and enhance all those things. So thanks for your time. Appreciate you putting this together. I know it was a lot of work, but thanks.
Thanks,
Mayor, if I could just make one point. If you look at the reconciliation page, this is $110,000 in expenses. That's more than probably 4 times the amount of all our other events together. This is our big deal. Our original budget was to have the city fund about $65,000 of that. And if you look at it, our final expenditures from the city was $49,000 on this. Part of that is $15,000 of grants that Brock pursued, which helped fund our rodeo and take some of that. And so that put us in the black even better. And I do appreciate Brock's diligence on this event and his committee and everybody who works with that. And it was nice that he was able to pursue that and get a little extra funding for West Haven Days. And we will continue to look for that and expand on how we can further do that to reduce it from our general fund expenditures while still having an excellent event. So thank you, Brock, and your committee.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, item number 8, action on Resolution 24-2022 for interlocal agreement between West Haven City and Weber County School District on a gymnasium. Do we have a representative here for that, or are we just going to have a discussion?
This is, we do not have a representation from Weber School District. So this would be just more of a discussion with the council and from staff. This is something that we've been working on for over a year as we've gone through. The interlocal agreement that's before us tonight is allows us to enter into a property ownership with the Weber School District in the exchange of $3.189 million to develop the second gym. This is a 50-year engagement with it. The reason why the ownership requirement is that there is to ensure that we don't run into any legal issues with use of park impact fees for this facility. It is a large and significant purchase, but we believe, and as we've discussed previously, this is a significant savings and an incredible joint venture with the Weber School District. And so we'd just like to take any questions. We did have a previous agreement that did not have the ownership interest on that. That was something that was brought up as we revised our park impact fees from our consultant. And so that has been put in. This document mimics the South Ogden agreement that they have with Weber School District, and that the ownership is there. Doesn't allow the Weber School District to buy out, which was a concern. They could buy out after 10 years and we'd lose money. So this one locks it in for a specific amount of time. Does require that if there's maintenance that we share the cost on that on the gymnasium itself, which is pretty much common since we have a shared ownership on that. We would ask for the council's approval on this, and so we can proceed. We have given good faith notions in the past the council has with the schools district saying we would proceed with this. So if there's any questions, we'd like to make those changes and get it back to the school as soon as possible.
I just had a question. What happens after 50 years?
Well, that's where we kind of figure we amortize those rates out.
I won't be around, so.
Yeah. I hope they've made better medicine if I'm still around as well. But by that time, you've amortized the cost of the investment out, and more or less they'd be free and clear. We could still enter into some kind of arrangement to lease the space. If not, by that time, if growth and expansion goes on, we might have invested in something of our own.
In 2072, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
I just had a question on 15. Not sure if it's a typo or if it's just me misunderstanding it, but where it says, it's the liability section. It says during their ownership of the school. I'm wondering if that should say gymnasium.
That's a good question. Amy?
Hold on, I'm looking at the first, like up at the top too. How they define school is that if you look on the first page, the district has obtained financing to build a new junior high school. And so located at 2100 South, 2700 West.
Part of that is because we do have access to areas outside of the gymnasium, so we can use the hallways for activities and that if we wanted to have a community event, the walking path and everything.
It just, I mean, later on, it does say gymnasium, so I don't know if that's good enough or, you know, at the end of it, or if it should be consistent.
I had that underlined as well, but I was even more concerned probably with just the cost of the insurance that's on there that we're not sure about, I think, on how that's supposed to come about. Because they are under construction, and it says we should have insurance under the construction phase and their ownership of the school in that sentence.
But our part of the construction insurance would be like the 5%. It wouldn't.
That's, yeah, and that's the part that's up in 5 on the construction of the school, up in the top up there, because it does have that percentage up there, but it talks about if there's any increases in the cost, and that's another part of it. It's a little different than that section, but it does talk about the increased costs on there. If it's gets to the 10,000 or more, is that part of our 5%, or is it, you know, a total of 200,000 that our 5% would be part of that 10,000?
I mean, my understanding from reading it is so the whole entire cost is 3.1 million with change. If it's going to be more than 3.1 million with change, more than 10,000, so we own 5% of that 3.1 million and change. And so if it ends up being more, some sort of weird cost increase, because it's not like we haven't seen that in the construction industry, they have to come back to us. And we have to agree to anything over that amount, but that would be part of.
When this was first discussed, when we had our first meetings, this was supposed to be a lock-in. Is that changed? Or we do have some variance here, because it does say it in the contract.
Yeah.
Brock?
Yes, go ahead.
Come on up, Brock. Come up to the microphone, please.
When we met with Scott Zelmer up at the district, that was more or less just if there is a cost increases on restroom fixtures or things, they didn't want to have to come back to the city to say, we got to spend $500 more on restrooms, will you approve that? So they put a threshold in there where they can make those adjustments without the necessary need to come back in and bother you essentially with everything that comes across. If it exceeds 10,000, that's when they said due diligence, we should come back and review that with the city. So that was the intent on the $10,000 threshold there. Do you remember that, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at one point under 3, it does give just the city will pay 2 district sum of 3 million in change to cover the increased cost. It says that they'll consult with the city on any change orders that will increase the cost, but it doesn't say what we'll do with that increase.
Right.
As to whether or not they are gonna, but they'd have to have us have our agreement. It'll say, so that is something that we may need to talk to them about, how they want to deal with that if there is a change order that's significantly more like that.
It seems like I remember it the same way the mayor does, that we were locking in at that price.
And that's how Section 3 would read.
But then you have this weird last sentence of paragraph 5.
Yeah.
That, what does that mean? Does that mean that they said that they'll consult? So what does consult mean? That they're going to charge us later? I think we just need to probably have a clarifying sentence after that about what that.
I would be all for that, just because we want to make sure that we don't get, I mean, this is a very big deal, right? This is a lot of money spent towards this project, so we want to be real solid on where we stand with this. And I think there was just a couple of items in here that, you know, contractually, that we wanted to make sure. It doesn't mention, that I can find, it didn't mention, for example, in the recitals, just that we would hold, because it says using it for our city's recreational programs. But I'd like to make sure that it adds in there for other community events. If we decide to have a dance over there, that's probably not as
Yeah, that was
recreation.
part of the deal.
Yeah, I had that note as well. It
And I
seemed
think,
like it
I think that we
excluded
should
it.
have that in the contract at least, so that if we want to have things, events over there, that it's not just recreational, or else we'd have to bring a basketball to a dance or something. I think everything else looked pretty good. I know there were some questions that you might have on this. But the insurance part of it, I think that needs to just be verified to make sure that we're clear on that, and I think that was it for me.
Can you point out where the insurance is during
Yes.
construction?
Yes, I will.
It was
Number
15.
Yep, number 15.
It's the first sentence of 15.
It's under liability and indemnification.
During both the construction phase and during ownership.
So we want to make sure that, because I don't have a cost for that. Is that above and beyond?
The way I read it, it would be more.
Okay, we probably should find that out too, just to be sure, because they're under construction now.
They are.
And quite frankly, I would strike the during the construction phase, because we don't have any ownership interest. We really can't.
We don't till we
insure
take
it.
ownership.
Yep.
So can we work on
Yes.
that and get that fixed on there?
And what are our yearly operating expense?
South Ogden says it was about $15,000 is what they're showing as an annual operating expense at this point. We imagine it would be something similar, if not a little bit lower, because of newer fixtures and more efficient systems.
So in that case, Mayor, would we table this until we can get the contract straightened out?
What about a timeline, Matt, on this? Is there?
Well, we've given this is just some minute clarifications. I'd love to get it taken care of in the next meeting. I have no problem tabling it to the next meeting to have a clean document in front of the council. If the council has any other specific questions on that, please feel free to email me so we can get those taken care of before the next meeting.
I got one question here if we can discuss.
Sure thing.
I had mentioned storage for all of our sports equipments, whether it's the football pads and helmets and nets and balls. If we could have a dedicated storage area, whether it's internal or outbuilding, is that something that we've discussed to ensure that we can house all of that? I mean, football equipment just itself is a lot. So I want to make sure we have something dedicated for West Haven City there.
I'll let Brock take. He was in that meeting. I'll just have him address that. Hopefully, he answers the way I will.
It was brought up, and the school district is more than amenable to make sure that we have the space. And actually, we have a fairly large space that we can kind of design and section off. It's a pretty good. I don't know that I can't remember the dimensions. I don't have this in front of me right now, but we might section it off into groups. Maybe a little chain link in there. But there was good space in there for us to be able to provide storage for the city.
Was that outside too?
There's storage upstairs behind where the bleachers are, and then there's storage down on the main floor that they're willing to that has immediate access to the exterior. They also did talk about adding an outbuilding that could be used as well.
I brought that up in the meeting, and they were more than they loved the idea of doing something on the outside, but it would not be in that. It would probably be something after the fact that we would be looking to put together. Because they had no plan for it originally until you brought it up in the meeting.
I know on our field trip we took as a council and so forth, that was part of it. They talked a little bit about, how they would at least be looking at it. I knew we had indoor storage for sure. That was set up. But
the outdoor would be very big.
Okay.
I wonder if we need to add that to the contract, the indoor storage.
I didn't see it in here either.
Yeah.
Not in there?
No, it's not.
It's in the... Yeah, I don't have that in front of me. I apologize,
No,
but
you're
it
good.
was in the design, and we went through it extensively in our meeting.
Yeah, and I know
If it's not, it should.
It'd be nice
added.
to add it in there.
Yeah,
just to
I know.
Clarification, yeah.
We had talked about it, and that was one of the things I think that we were excited about. And so I think we need to make sure it's in the agreement. I mean, administrations change, councils change. I think we need that in writing.
And I think just attaching their plan that they have, because it is shown on the designated plan. That's not in here, but it does show the really good storage that I'm excited about.
Yeah,
More than South Ogden and even more than the Farmington.
I think it should be designated and just make sure that we've got it in the contract, though.
Okay.
It can be on the plan, but we want to make sure that's our space. Any other questions, council? I'm ready for a motion if you feel comfortable
Was
moving
your
forward with it.
question about the insurance answered satisfactory?
I think we just need to make sure that we get that answer back on the insurance side.
Do we
on
need
the
to
cost.
specify though that it's proportionate, or how's that
I don't know
work?
what proportion it is at this point. I'm not sure.
'Cause some of it's like half, and some of it's
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't be half.
Oh.
Not even close, but we should be able, can we get that information pretty quick from them?
Sure thing.
Because I don't think even in the contract in here, it just says we have to pay that anyway. It's not like we're going to eliminate it. It's going to be a cost that we're going to have to endure on that. So we just want to make sure it's within reason before we get everything put together. So if the council wants to approve it tonight, we can with the changes, or we can table it.
I would move to table resolution 24-2022, the interlocal agreement between West Haven City and Weber County School District Gymnasium.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion in 2 seconds. We'll take that one. Any other further discussion? Okay, let's see. Let me make sure here. Yeah, all in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, did I hear from Councilmember Schwab?
It was an aye, yes.
Thank you. All right, very good. So we'll table that till we get the language down, and we'll probably have that back at our next council meeting. We'll move on to the next item on here. This is item number 9, action on resolution 25-2022, declaring a certain city property as surplus to allow to auction or sell. And the property is as follows. I hate to give this up. A 1972
It might become more
Starcraft
valuable. We learned tonight.
boat and trailer, and 18 office chairs.
Well, since we have a pond, maybe we want to keep our boat. Okay.
If there's any discussion on that.
Did you, I mean, I think the staff review is pretty self-evident
I think it
as to
is.
what, I mean, Dan confiscated a boat, so here we are.
Yeah, so here we are. So I think we just need to, if there's any further questions on this or discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 25-2022, declaring certain city property as surplus to allow to auction or sell the property of the 1972 Starcraft boat and trailer and 18 chairs.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call on this. Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab.
Aye.
Excellent. Councilmember Saunders,
Aye.
and Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll miss that boat. Okay, item number 10.
Missed the boat?
Thank you. Discussion on a rezone staff letter, rezones with conditions and development agreements. Is this something we're going over discussion with?
So this is something that Sherry and I felt was important to, and I don't know if we want, you guys might want to have a discussion about this at a later time because of the length of our meeting. But back, not last meeting, but the weekend meeting before that regarding the commercial rezone that came up and why there was a recommendation for a rezone with conditions with this particular property versus why we've routinely asked you not to do rezones with conditions. And so we just thought that it was important to bring it to your attention. and have a discussion about it if necessary, because Sherry and I just don't feel like we did an adequate job explaining why that night. And so we thought that maybe putting together something like this would help a little bit better, moving forward.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation. I think, did the council get a chance to read through this?
I read through it, and it was a really comprehensive explanation. I thought it was satisfactory. That's my opinion.
Any other comments on this? Do we need to go over anything else? I think it was pretty self-explanatory and helpful, so thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Just a discussion, no action will be taken on this. If we do need to bring this up in a work session or something to discuss it, we can do that later date. So thank you. Appreciate you guys doing that. We'll move on to, do you guys want to move this down to the bottom, number 11?
Nobody's here for that.
Okay.
You
Thank
guys
you for
wanna
your
stay
patience
longer?
and waiting. We're going to move forward with item number 11, notice and possible action on the proposed amendment to the Green Farms Master Development Agreement in response to the notice of default. Do we want to, Matt, is this something you want to talk about a little bit?
Yes, and we of course have representatives from Nilsen Homes here. Since I was out a little bit of last week, I asked Amy to review this, and with the notice of default, we addressed several items. There's been missed dates. We wanted to clarify who would take ownership of open spaces, pond clarification, and other things. The largest thing that with the notice of default was missing several of the dates and lack of completion on open space. This has been an issue that the residents brought up. It's been an issue that the staff has been working on, but it's boiled to the point where we needed to send out the notice of default. As we've worked with Nilsen Homes, they've looked to remedy those, giving us firm dates. And one of the options the council has is to take their amendment and accept these revised dates and kind of put it on an extended cure time frame. Generally, with a notice of default, things would have to be cured within 60 days. Because of the extent on some of these open space development, that can be challenging. And so Nilsen Homes has brought in an option to get to work on these things, get things taken care of, and have it completed by the end of this year, by and large, on the areas that are already underdeveloped, and to continue on with development of proposed community center, the ponds in the following year. So I know Nilsen Homes has a small presentation that they'd like to go through with the council just to address some of the issues and how they're approaching it, and to relay their intent and dedication to resolving these things. They feel that Green Farms is a key investment in the city and for the residents, and they want to make sure it's put together as best they can. As we talked about in our work session, there are a few determinations the council needs to make if they decide to proceed with the amendment as a way to remedy the notice of default. We would ask for consideration and determination on open space, on the pond contribution, as well as the community center. So if the council's all right, we'll have Nilsen Homes come up, and I've just got a PowerPoint that they've promised to go through kind of quickly, though it's got a lot of pages. And
yeah, Jake Jones from Nilsen Homes. I appreciate the time. I know we're going, and it is a few slides, but like Matt said, I'll go through rather quickly. We just wanted to, it is great to be here again, and I know last time there was a lot of questions that I wasn't prepared to answer, and so that's part of what this presentation is to answer a lot of those questions you had last time, and provide some substantive, proof of that. And I guess, yeah. Before we start, I just want to say that we really do appreciate the concern of the residents and of the city council. Like Matt mentioned, we really do. This is a meaningful project to us as well as this to the city and the residents. So you can go next page, Matt. So I guess the first thing we want to do is just give an update of kind of where we're at and everything that's been done this year in 2022. And so these pages we can kind of go through pretty quickly, but let me just outline kind of to the left, that left side, everything that kind of the process that we've been going through. So first, we wanted to get a conceptual design. We wanted to finalize that with what we felt good about and kind of with some feedback that we got from the city. Then we had our community meeting. We'll go through. You'll see a picture of that, and a lot of these residents were here. And then we then went through kind of the real work of going through the several iterations of the landscape plans. And so that's where all the plantings are going to be, what type of material and whatnot, trails, all that. And then next we had to go through the engineering piece of it, which grading, utilities, all that. So those two steps took quite a long time. And I appreciate that everybody wants to see work on the ground, but there is actually a lot of kind of behind the scenes that has to go on. But after that, we were able to engage contractors, our civil guys, the landscape architects, suppliers, and then from there we did send an update out to the residents, and then kind of full circle, we then worked on an update to the MDA to kind of update a lot of those timelines. So we can go next slide, Matt. There's just the conceptual design of the community center that they were proposing. Next slide. There's kind of the pictures of our community event that we had with a lot of the residents, and we got some great feedback on ways to improve. We also hired a new HOA management company, which we feel like it's been a great move. Go ahead next, Matt. So this kind of big section, there's several slides, and we can just cruise through those, Matt. But each open space has a site plan and landscape plan with all the plantings and the material of whether it's going to be sod or natural open space. So there's all the kind of and so far we have these done for all the southern open spaces that are right around all the development, and then to come will be the future phases that are kind of to the north and to the east. So, and in this section you can just keep cruising, Matt. This is just the engineered plan, so same thing: drainage, utilities, and again, just while he's going through there. The reason we bring this up is just, it's not that we've just been sitting on our hands doing nothing. We really have been working through a lot of things on the back end. So, and if you want to go back 2 slides, sorry, Matt. Yeah, that one right there. So this is the progress that's been done actually on the ground right now. So they have cut the stream in on the east side of the open space, and they've laid down some weed barrier and cobble and rocks. And so we're excited about that. It's only been the past week to 2 weeks that we've seen this, and so we're excited. We're excited to get going, and this will just continue all the way through. And the park, the kind of community park, will be next, and concurrent as well. Here's an estimate from a landscape contractor to install everything. So we have engaged them as well and made sure that they're okay with the timelines we're proposing. Go ahead next, Matt. And then we've also engaged playground manufacturers. So this will also be in the community park area, the silo park area that we're calling it. So two playgrounds, one kind of school age that's actually 9 feet tall. So that'll be a good one. And then kind of early age that's 5 feet tall. So, and also with that, we have engaged a pickleball contractor and are on their schedule. So, and then like I mentioned, we communicated this timeline to the residents via letter through our HOA company. And so that was one thing we heard loud and clear. Was they wanted more communication, so we've done our best to try and communicate more and be more responsive to that. And then again, next slide kind of brings us back to the MDA amendment proposal. And so a lot of these things, kind of twofold, addressed a lot of the issues of default, and then also to update the MDA, which there's a lot of crossover, but there were also some other things that we wanted to update as well in the MDA. So go ahead and go next, Matt. So here's kind of the conceptual plan. So kind of going back full circle, here's the updated deadlines that we are proposing, putting in the MDA amendment. And again, for area 1, 2, and 3, as well as 4, we're committed to getting these in this year. And so those are the deadlines that we would propose. And again, that's hardscape. So, trails, parking lots, concrete, pickleball courts this year. And then next year for kind of the later areas that are to the north and to the east. And then also kind of those other non-landscaping items, the road out to 4700 West, 3675. We are committed to putting that in this year as well. And we actually have another follow-up meeting with UDOT tomorrow. So we're in the process of UDOT, and that takes time, but we're making good progress there. And they already laid sewer. Storm drain is getting laid as we speak. And then when that happens, we'll close off that entrance to the south. And then also the Hammerhead was another issue of the MDA. And so we're committed to getting that in actually by the end of October. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. And again, happy to spend more time on this. If you have questions now, or we can kind of come back around if there's any questions later. But if there's no questions on this specifically right now, we can go to the next slide.
Jake, can
yeah,
I ask a question?
Absolutely.
On number 1, when we're talking about hardscape, we go through all the areas except area number 5. Is there a reason that that's not delineated?
I think that's actually in a different section. Are you talking about the
It actually
proposal?
is under, if you could flip to the next page, it's under BI, Open Space Area 5.
Thank you.
I was actually looking at that just now. I'm like, I know we addressed that. Where is that?
Great question, though. Yeah, because it was a separate item in the MDA, we put it as kind of a separate sub-item there. So, but yeah, great question. Here's kind of a summary of the MDA update proposal. And again, to Matt's point, there are a few things that we would love feedback from the council on, and that's, as Matt said, which open space areas the city is inclined to take. We've kind of been under the impression that obviously the Silo Park and Area 5 and then Area 6 would go to the city, and then in terms of, and Area 2 as well, go to the city. With Area 1 and 4, we're, as far as the developer goes, we're open either way. So that's one of the kind of things that we'd love feedback from. And then number two was I guess kind of 2 and 3 together, just contributions of if you're interested in doing the community center and if you're interested in upsizing the pond from 3 to 5 acres. So that's kind of the presentation in a nutshell. Again, we are really excited about this community, and you know, I definitely understand a lot of the concern that there hasn't been, you know, movement on the ground. But again, we are, as you can see, we have fully designed and engineered drawings now that we can get off and running. So we're excited to show you that we mean business, and kind of just resolve these concerns. So
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate that. I think I want to just address to the citizens that are here and those that may not be. We did receive all your emails and phone calls and everything else that was involved. I think I just want to make sure that you know that even though I know I couldn't respond to all of them, I just ran out of time. But we tried to, I'm sure, make sure that we did respond back to you to let you know that we heard from you. The discussions and things that were going on, we could tell you're very united in the way that you were approaching the subject. And I think that the council has tried to, at this point in time, we're just learning a lot of things that we can and can't do at this time and where we stand with this particular project. So overall, I just wanted to let you know that we do care, and we did hear your voices loud and clear. I think the council, as you guys go ahead and start to ask questions on here, I think you guys would probably feel the same way, right?
I do. Thank you. I appreciate your reaching out to us, and I especially appreciate how respectful and positive you were. And I have not responded because I had no answers. So as we get answers, I will respond. So thank you.
Does the council have questions for Mr. Jake on this?
I have a question for Amy, if that's all right.
Yes.
You mentioned changing this to do further amendments based on the pond and the silo thing. Is that different than what we're looking at now? Would that be a different vote then?
Are you talking about if we tabled a couple things, or if we
tabled a couple
amend-
of things? Is everything included in here in case we wanted to move some of those items forward?
Yeah, everything is in this draft. If you wanted to table certain things, you could just go down the list of, you know, okay, we want to table number 3 or like the pond construction number 7, and just ask to have that removed from this amendment and put into, you know, a different amendment and keep discussing. So you can do that, but I think it's numbered pretty well that it would be easy to take out, you know, things if you wanted to have some further discussion on those, on a couple of these issues.
Thank you.
So I think a few of the items on here that, you know, we can ask some questions about is, again, the city, is the city going to get involved with some of these areas that they talked about with ownership, especially on 1 and 4? And also where we move from here with the community center and the pond in general.
As far as I'm concerned, I think the city did make some promises when we first did this, and even though they weren't specified specifically as they should have been, I feel that after talking to Matt and getting the FTEs situation that we would need, I feel that the city should take all of them. I'm not talking about the pond or the community center yet. I'm just talking about the green
Open
space.
space?
The open space area.
Space.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think one thing just to point out that I will on here is that it was intended to be dedicated to the city. I think in a lot of the emails and communications, it was that, you know, it was promised or set out. I think the overall, the city would have to deny that overall in order to have that happen. But I think as we've looked at it as a council, and I'm not speaking for the council, but as as we've looked through this, we don't see probably a lot of change in taking over Area 4 and 1. There'll be some cost to the city that is pretty extensive. So rather than pass that on to citizens in the community and the use of that property, that makes a big difference on what's going on with that overall and how we go about taking care of it. Concerns are, I think, from the city's platform are that this is going to require us to hire more people, probably bring on different type of equipment because of the landscape of the way it's set up. This is going to be a pretty good sized cost to the city, or we could obviously allow an HOA to take it over. But I think the way we're looking at it right now and some of the discussions we've had a lot of discussions about this. Yeah, did you bring that fly?
I didn't, but he likes me.
Yeah, don't send him over here. But I think we've got a lot of things to just review, and I think as the council, if you continue to ask some questions or get involved with any other concerns that you might have at this point, now's the time.
I mean, I think that I share, and everyone else can chime in too, a concern that, you know, we enter into this agreement with these amendments, that they're actually going to happen. And I'm just wondering if there's any kind of anything that we can place in here in this agreement other than some deadlines that would show a serious commitment by Nielsen Homes to keep these deadlines.
And it's a great point. And, you know, if I'm hearing you right, it's kind of what's different this time, right? And I think that's part of why we wanted to share the first 20 slides or whatever, just to show that we have actually made progress and we didn't have that before. But that being said, you know, I hear your concern. I don't know that we're ready to propose something tonight in terms of you know what you're asking. But if there was anything you guys want us to consider, we'd definitely regroup as a team and get back to you on that.
Jake, can I ask how long you've had these plans prepared?
Yeah, so it depends on which plan you're talking about. The landscape plans, I think the final version of the landscape plans was probably 6 weeks ago. I don't know that for sure. I can get a date for you. But then after the landscape plans, then we also had to engage the engineer to get all the drainage, make sure the drainage was right, and then sign up the contractor. So.
And when would you suppose that you started working on those landscape plans?
Probably, started on the plans themselves?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's tough because I think it's been a general work in progress for a long time. But I think, I don't know, I'd probably have to get back to you on that. And I could tell you when we started kind of conceptually doing things and when we started the full-on construction document plans.
I mean, conceptually, we've all seen the conceptual plans from from the beginning of this, right?
Yeah.
And let me just say also that I am a resident of Green Farms, and I want to ensure the public that there is no conflict of interest here. And so put that out on public record. But the fact that the date that you gave 6 weeks ago, or the general timeline of 6 weeks ago, I think that's concerning. And so when Councilmember Saunders is like, hey, we need something more, for you to say, well, you know, we've been working on this for some time. We haven't been sitting on our hands. We started this 6 weeks ago, or we finalized it 6 weeks ago.
Right.
It still feels like this is all being done because we had to do something. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I agree with Councilmember Saunders that hard dates might not be enough. And I don't know what the alternative is here, and maybe our legal counsel can give us that information. But we've been here before, and we still don't have any of this stuff. So, and we haven't been to the point of a default letter, of course, before, but we have had promises. The last time someone was in here, we had promises.
Right.
And those promises were not kept.
Right, and I definitely understand the concern. I think it is in writing this time, so I mean, it is a little bit different. I understand. I still absolutely understand your concern.
The original MDA was in writing, just so we're clear.
Yep.
It's all been in writing for 5 years.
Yeah.
One possible suggestion might be so that Nielsen has a little, now, I don't know how council feels about this, but there has been discussion about expanding the pond and the city's portion of, or I guess the city would pay for all of the expansion part of it. So would there be any interest in putting something in here where if they don't meet the deadlines, they get to pay for that expansion?
I think I would have a problem with that, Councilmember Saunders. I'm concerned that there's so much that they need to commit to. I probably need to walk this back a little bit. So I'm fairly new to the council. This all happened starting in 2017. I recall going to the very first rezone planning commission meeting back then. That was probably one of my first meetings with the city. There's a lot of this that I was unaware of until recently, and I want to thank the residents for putting all those emails out there, for the conversations, so we understand what the struggles have been. I have a problem with the MDA as it's written currently, because this does absolutely nothing about you're in default. All it does is just throw some more dates on a wall, and we write an amendment, and you continue to build additional subdivisions. And I feel that is not correct. I feel that there has been dates, the deadlines that you needed to meet. Now, I know that was your predecessor, or however that lines up in your organization, but we still have to ensure these areas are done. And I don't believe any of these dates should be in this amendment. I think we could talk about Silo Park, we could talk about the acreage of the ponds, we could talk about ownership of open space. But I think until some of these amenities that were committed to in writing, and according to all these residents who all have the exact same statements, was promised to them during the purchase of their lots and the build of their homes, I want to see that completed before we approve any additional subdivisions. And I don't think that needs to be in an amendment. I think you're a default until you get caught up to where you should have been. I don't know how the other council members feel about that, but that's a very strong opinion of mine, that you're in default, and this amendment does nothing to correct that. It just throws more dates and kicks the can down the road.
Can I address this?
Yes.
Councilmember Swap, this is what our problem is. The MDA does control, and it gives a very specific outline as to what the procedure is, as to how to deal with a default. So the first thing is that we have to issue a notice of default, and that's in section 13 in the first, in the original MDA. And in it, we have to, there's very specific contents of that notice of default. We then have to do a meet and confer, and that has to be done within 14 or 15 days, which that is something that has been engaged in. They then have the ability under the MDA to suggest a cure period. They can come up with reasonable cures. Right now, under the MDA process, we do not have the right to say that they can't bring forth additional phases until they complete this other stuff. Because of the way that it's written, if they are proposing reasonable solutions, if we ended up having to litigate this, a court would say it's reasonable, like this October, some of these were October 22nd, I think the roads were October 22nd.
Yeah, the Hammerhead.
The Hammerhead was that too.
June, yeah.
Some of the phases, like the hardscapes, with some of them is the end of December. But if they're acting reasonably to cure the default, because this is partly our fault that we did not issue a notice of default before this. This is the very first notice of default they have had. Regardless of, we've talked to them, we didn't start the process that was outlined in the MDA. And so that is the concern that I have legally as to whether or not you can say, well, we're not going to issue any more building permits or say okay to any further concepts until they fix the things that are outlined in this letter.
But we could, if I'm understanding right, add into this agreement something to that effect if they don't meet these deadlines.
We could possibly do something different regarding what would happen if they don't meet the deadlines. But that's something that we need to.
No new building lots or something, or you gotta expand your commitment on something, or I'm looking for, just something that's solid
something
besides
further, something
new
that's
dates.
a little bit more immediate that, as to, what they didn't install the road. They didn't install, so now what? I mean.
Yeah. And I think you bring up.
I guess I understand what you're saying, Amy, and I'm definitely not an attorney by any means. But I think putting an amendment with future dates isn't a cure. I think it's just restating dates. I don't understand how that is a cure, and I think that's something that can be argued.
But that in the original MDA, it outlines that they have to come up with how are they going to fix the problem. And right now, this is their suggestion as to this is how we're going to fix it. We'll have things done by these specific dates. So it is, legally, it is a suggested cure. I understand what you're saying about, well, there's additional dates, but there's not a way to get around that. And frankly, I insisted on them putting in very specific dates because it makes it easier to enforce versus there's some provisions of the MDA that are incredibly difficult to enforce because of they're not incredibly specific.
So just to clarify, so we have things that need to be cured, and the cure period is 60 days. If it can't be cured in the 60 days, then there's extensions to the defaulting party to continue to cure.
If they're doing it with reasonable diligence, there's got to be reasonable diligence.
Okay.
What's considered reasonable? Who decides that?
Well, a court does, but it's basically, Loyal, their attorney, would probably agree with me that it's a little bit subjective as to what a reasonable person would deem. I mean, it's like this road and the Hammerhead being done at the end of October. Some people who are living in the development would think that it was reasonable, that it should have been done last year when it was, stated in the NDA. Some would even say that it was reasonable to have it done at the end of June, which is when Mark Staples said last year when Councilmember Hunter specifically asked him in that meeting, when will it be, when will this be done? And Mark promised that it would be done by the end of June. But the problem is we didn't do a default. We didn't follow the process that was outlined in the MDA itself. And so now we're at that point where we have issued the letter and we need to move forward that way. And so now what's reasonable?
Well, I understand that the city hasn't issued a default before, and they could have, but I guess I don't see how that, I mean, because we're lenient with them, then we can't enforce anything, or we can't enforce that they do it, or else no more permits. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that we didn't follow the process that was outlined in the MDA, so there's certain things that we need to do to...
We did follow the process, we just followed it later instead of when we could have.
You're right, but the problem is we still have to give them, they still are able to cure it within a reasonable period of time. And if they're acting with reasonable diligence, and whether or not the proposal of what they're proposing is reasonable would come down to whether or not a court thinks that that's reasonable. Probably the better course of action would be to suggest some sort of penalty regarding, if they don't meet these deadlines.
I think that's what I'm after, and I'm guessing that's what you're after, Councilmember Schwab and Nina, but you want, the only difference is you feel like it should be now.
It's just really hard to sit here and read through this and say, oh, look, another promise, and I get that it's on paper, but the MDA was on paper, and so it's really hard to believe that this will happen by these dates, because I've lost faith in Nielsen Homes. The community has lost faith in Nielsen Homes. I think this council has lost faith. So it's hard to believe that these dates.
Well, and to some extent, I agree with that. I think that if we want to, if we want to change that going forward is what I'm after, and work with, if we get it defined, because we haven't had it defined in the past, then now we have something going forward that we can actually enforce for the citizens. And so that's why I open with the question, is there something that Nielsen Homes can give us, like, yeah, we're willing to do X, Y, or Z if we don't hit these dates, to show that they are committed to hit these dates, and that they're not just dates to pacify us and the citizens until the next time when they don't hit the dates.
So, Amy, let me see if I understand this. They have met their MDA requirements for the default.
Well, no, that's something that you guys have to decide.
Right.
Because the meet and confer has to do with whether or not the two parties can come up with a resolution that you're okay with to move forward. I mean, and this document is a talking point. This is not, this wasn't final. This was always, because they came and this is something that here, this is our suggestions as to how to fix the issues. This isn't, hey, we're not willing to discuss any other changes. This is what we're suggesting as to how to cure it. Now you guys have to decide, are you willing to accept these things and move forward? Or do you want some additional things changed, or, how to move forward that way?
Well, I'm not sure that we want to move up dates when we understand that this is complicated engineering. We don't want this done just because we want it done. We want it done right.
Right.
So I think what we're saying are these dates reasonable, understanding what has to be done, and if we decide they're not, would a court find them reasonable? And I probably would. I mean,
I actually think that a court would find these dates reasonable. I know that the residents and Councilmember Morse would probably not, because they've been living in it. But the problem is they'll come in and make the argument of, well, we have to take, a couple of weeks to install rocks, or we have to take, this is when the timeline of, when we'll have concrete. This is the timeline of when we'll have this. And so those are the arguments that they'll come into court with when it comes to like the hardscapes on the majority of the open space areas or the end of December, which some of these hardscapes, they have concrete, they have asphalt, they have like a dry stream bed, weed barrier, cobble, grading, trails. All of those things take coordination and time regarding what kind of grading needs to be done, what kind of prep work needs to be done, what about the concrete? Are they going to be able to get the concrete? Because right now concrete's out, 3 weeks at least to be able to order it?
Yeah,
Depends who you are, but yes.
Yeah, so.
And you're limited on the amount that you can get at a time.
Yeah, and you have those kind of limits too. And so whether or not a court would find that based upon all of those circumstances and within the next, we're August, September, October, November, December, within 3 months for the road and the hammerhead, 5 months for not quite, because this is areas 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, but not 5, to have all the hardscapes done.
I think that we
And that's 50 acres
understand
of dealing with.
Right. No, I think we understand that it is very complex to bring in contractors and cement and everything that goes into something that's as grand as this is. The issue
Especially when
I
you're
have
starting
with it is that it's not like it was due yesterday. It was due a long time ago. That's the issue I have with it.
Well, I think,
And it's not because I live there. I would have this issue with any MDA. If we're this far behind in any MDA, I take issue with that.
I think the question is, where do we go from here? And I don't think having to litigate this is going to help us in any way.
It won't move it faster.
It's not going to
No.
move it faster. So understanding that mistakes were made, I think we better learn how to write MDAs in the future to be more, be more concrete. But in order to move this forward, I'm not sure that requiring something that will not be required by a court is just going to make this out farther.
Sorry,
Go
can I
ahead.
ask some questions? Can you stop sharing screen if you don't mind? I can't see if Jake's at the stand and
Yeah, I'm still here.
perfect. What is your estimated budget to complete areas 1 through 6? What is it going to cost Nelson Homes to do that?
We don't have a finalized budget, but we can group up and see, what we're comfortable sharing. So I couldn't give that number to you right now, but I can definitely regroup with my team and see what we're comfortable sharing.
Would you be willing to put that money in some type of escrow to ensure that you fulfill your obligations?
Good question.
It's a good idea. It really is. And again, I don't know that we're quite ready to have these kind of conversations tonight. I'm not saying no, but yeah, I think it's a good point.
So I have I've worked with a lot of different general contractors, Richmond Homes, Homes, Ivory, pre-2008. One of the concerns as I was getting freshened up on all of the history of Green Farms is that you guys created a separate LLC for this project. And it's not under all of your subdivisions under Nelson Homes. It's specific to this. My concern is we have more of a downturn and you guys decide to pull out and with your LLC, I mean, you're only liable for very little if you decided to walk away and chapter out with the IRS. So I would be in favor of finding out what the costs are for all of these areas and having that money set aside and to ensure this gets completed for the residents. If that's something you're willing to entertain.
Yeah.
Can I ask just a quick question? So Commissioner Swap, are you talking about like how we generally deal with subdivision improvements, that the developer puts the money in escrow, and then once things are installed, they ask to have it inspected by the engineer or by, whomever with the city, and then the city releases those amounts after lien agreements are
Yes,
signed
that's what I'm alluding
and
to.
presented?
Yes. Is that acceptable under the law? Because that's what I'm asking.
Well, it's something that I think that we can discuss with Nielsen Homes, and as to whether or not they're willing to. I mean, I think that the pond and the silo issue dealt with differently, but maybe with these hardscapes and the landscape, they might be willing to.
I completely agree with that. I think anything with the dates, we ought to pull out of this amendment and deal with the silo park and the pond and ownership of open spaces. That's my opinion. And then we can deal with everything else in a separate amendment if need be.
I think making sure.
I don't know how the council feels about that.
There's some priority, because again, you're looking at delays sometimes, and that's what it says basically in here, is that if you have delays, that would give you a pushback a little bit on dates. But you put concrete and foundations for homes, right? And so we should be able to have that concrete be prioritized, for some of these projects in front. So I like the idea of doing that. That kind of puts us in a situation too where at this point in time, you said you weren't quite ready to answer some of those questions because we have thrown a lot back at you.
That's all right.
We've only had quite a few meetings about this, and so this has got a lot to figure out. But there is that option, I guess, to table this and try and see if we can get some more answers and figure out if there's some, resolve to this overall. So I don't know how the council feels at this point.
If we choose to table this, do we have the ability to at least table parts of it and push forward an amendment that would at least speak to the dedication of the open space, since there's 25 people here waiting to hear what those results are?
If I could just propose, I think if we, I'd hate to separate amendments just for that. I think if there is a motion by the council to give an intent for us to craft that amendment by, so as we work through these other issues, at least the council will have made a recordable motion on dedication of the open space that we can then work on and craft that amendment by. I don't mind working with amendments, but cutting them into a bunch, there's a lot of public notice and hearings that just complicate and push out the timeframes. So rather than chopping this up into 2 or 3 amendments, I would recommend making a motion so that the public would know the clear intent of the city, and we can incorporate that into an amendment and try to get everything together in a timely fashion.
I think one thing that you're clear on is how deadly serious we are with those dates.
Absolutely.
Maybe intermediate dates would help. You'll have this done by this date, this done, but so that we can actually see that there is progress being made.
Yeah.
I would suggest that might be a solution as well. But I think you know how determined we are that these dates need to be kept.
Absolutely. And just so you know, we are too. I know you might not believe that, but we really are. I mean, we dedicate a lot of time to make sure that we feel good about the schedule, and so.
Would that be it? Would that be something we could do, is to put this in steps?
And
this will be done by this date. This will be done by this date.
And that's actually what we did with the Hammerhead. The Hammerhead we initially had at the end of the year, but then staff said, no, you should shift that up. And so we can definitely look at what things we could potentially shift up. And
I think that would be very helpful in us, moving forward.
Yeah. I think if we could, it might be helpful to have legal counsel maybe help us with that motion a little bit, put you on the spot a little bit to see if we can maybe make sure that motion is within.
I have one thing first. when we're talking about the Hammerhead, it's listed as 4550 west. I believe it's 4450 west.
Correct.
I'll make sure to, yeah, look
So
into that, make sure
that
we get it
needs to be
right.
changed in all of the language here.
Don't put it in the wrong place.
I'm
That would
totally
be-
on board with
So-
escrow.
It's 44?
4450.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was wrong in the previous MDA too. But on your conceptual plan, it says 4450, so.
All right, yeah, we'll make sure we get that ironed out.
I'm good with the escrow idea. I do think that having language in here at the end of the deadline, you haven't met it, this is what happens. Right? If we can't put a hold on things right now, then you say, if you haven't completed it by 12/31/2022, no more whatever. Right? So they understand that that's what it is. And I completely agree with Rob. You're putting material into homes that you could put into this project, right?
Yeah, and right now, we don't anticipate any delays, right? And so it would just be,
You
know,
just jinxed yourself. Why would you say that? out
that's
loud?
true, I shouldn't have said that.
He's been standing there a long time.
Now we of course will, but no.
So
No, we're
I
not-
would
like I said,
prefer
we're-
language at the end of December. This is what will happen.
I mean, one thing, if we do like the escrow, if that we're able to agree on an escrow thing, then at the end of December, we take the money and we finish. That's what we do with subdivision improvements. That if it hits a certain point that, and the developer hasn't finished, then we can go in and ask to have it released to the city, and we hire contractors and we go and finish the project.
So,
Yeah.
And that, again, I don't recommend that for the silo park or for the pond, just because of the size of those, and you guys haven't decided on what exactly you want to do with
So let's,
that. But we need
let's
some
split
guidance
those,
as the
let's
pond.
split those out in the motion, and we'll work on that at a later date.
And I just want to know for sure, the open space is not the entrance into Green Farm, like the main road down. That's not part of the open space.
It actually is.
It is.
It's
Because
completed,
in my opinion, that should be part of the development. That's a HOA responsibility, is just maintaining those trees and that grass there. That doesn't, for me, that's what I think.
That's not part of any of
Yeah.
those.
It's not on the drawings,
It's not part of the
but
discussion, it hasn't
that's what
been
Matt
yet,
just said. So
No, I
I
don't
just-
think it is.
But it is a good point, yeah.
just bringing that up, maybe everybody feels differently, that it
No,
should be.
I agree with that. I think that it needs to be an area that benefits the entire city, not just an
Well,
entryway.
the one side probably doesn't, but the other side is a trail. So I don't know if
Oh,
you want to
yeah.
differentiate those, because one side is a trail and the other side is just aesthetics.
Are we talking about 3675 south
No, the
No,
entrance.
it's the entrance to Green Farms.
It's Green Farm
Green
Way.
Farm.
from 4,000?
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's going to be two when we're done. Okay.
that's
Just
right.
wanted to confirm.
I think that the courtyard HOA might maintain some of that, so we would probably want to find out how much of that they're actually maintaining anyway.
I
but
believe it's
I-
on the west side. They maintain everything on the west side. There's
They maintain everything on the west side.
well, on the west side, south of their townhomes. There's
Right.
kind of, yeah. I don't believe it extends all the way up. Green
Yeah, I
Farm
don't
Way.
know who, I mean, I don't see that on anything, so I don't know who that falls under.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a
let's
good
get that clarified, I think,
Yep, we can clarify that.
overall. Can you help us with that?
So my suggestion is, if you want to divide some of this up, one, make a motion regarding what your intent is as to the open spaces, to the 6 areas regarding the open space, whether or not you want to, the city take all 6, whether or not the city take some of them, whether the city have the HOA. I think if you make that motion first, and then let's talk about, what you may want to pull out of this agreement, the silo and the other, and the pond, or talk about what you want to do with the pond.
I guess my concern is that it seems like we're not clear on what's part of the HOA now, and it seems like there's some ambiguity there. Is that
Well,
what
he
I'm
just said that the HOA takes care of the west side from the townhomes all the way south to 4,000. Anything else, they do not take care of.
Yeah, I believe so. I can double check, but that's my understanding, is that the detention basin and then all the way along both sides of Green Farm Way. So I guess on the east side of Green Farm Way is all HOA maintained right now. And I say HOA maintained, developer maintained. And then everything north of the townhomes on the west side of Green Farm Way is also developer maintained. And then everything within the courtyard, the townhomes right up front, and then just south, there's kind of a little grassy patch that's maintained by the townhome HOA. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
What was that last part that's maintained by the courtyard HOA?
There's a piece of grass that's just south of the townhomes on the west side of the road.
Oh yeah, that's not grass actually, but they are trying to maintain it.
It was grass, yes.
But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
About the entrance to the patio homes, that's HOA maintained, correct?
Yes.
Those two areas.
And I say HOA, developer maintained right now.
The open space? Is
Yeah.
that what you're referring
It's-
to?
Yes, the already established open space on the east side of the Green Farm Way.
Yeah, with the trails going through the water feature.
So I guess
Looking at the conceptual drawings, going back from the original MDA and then the First and Second Amendment, I have a concern with Area 4. Now, it's a little tough for me where I've only been here for 7 months to understand what was committed to. And it sounds through conversations that the original council and mayor intended all open space to be accepted and come into the city. That seems to be kind of the consensus. But looking at the drawings, it doesn't really illustrate what you have shown as Area 4. And I don't know that that directly ties into the open areas for the public to access on a regular area. I mean, that kind of looks like a landscaped alleyway between some homes to nowhere. And I think that area right there, I would be more comfortable having that be part of the developer / HOA. I don't know what other people's thoughts are on that.
Maybe I can give a little context. And again, either way you decide, I'm personally okay with. But it's basically a storm drain channel. So it'll be kind of a dry stream bed with a trail that goes along it as well. That'll connect to the other trails with some trees on the side. So if that helps.
Councilmember Schwab, it is part of the trail system that leads along there and goes up to the future pond area and the canal.
On Area 4,
Yes.
am I looking at the right spot there? That looks like this.
The yellow part at the very bottom of the map that we have.
That's Area 2.
That's 2.
That too?
Area 4 is in the middle.
Yeah, it's more of an extension that were on any of the concept drawings.
It's the
It's
small
a lot
area.
further to the west.
It's a little number.
That's a piece that's exactly, that matches up to some of the other, but yes, that's just that drainage area. There's so many numbers.
Well, I think in the work meeting, Ryan, that was discussed as being simple to maintain. If we took on Area 1, we might as well take Area 4 because it was not that much more to do. Is that correct, Matt?
Yes, I would,
that what you had said?
however Area 1 goes, I would have Area 4 go the same way. If the city takes Area 1, I would take Area 4. If we decide to have HOA take Area 1, I would have the HOA take Area 4 as well. It's very similar in nature.
Okay, so we need to draft a motion on this.
Well, somebody needs to give me guidance as to what you guys want. Do you want to keep it all? Do
Well, I
you
think the
not want it?
guidance
Do you want
is,
part?
I'll
Do
tell you
want-
my recommendation, and then the council can decide if they agree with that or if they want to remove parts of that. Let's start there. I would recommend that the city take Area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Is that part of this?
Well, 6 is the
And-
pond, so maybe
well,
you
yeah.
maybe you deal with the
The other, not 6. We'll deal with that
Well,
later.
you can't say 6.
I would take 6 because no matter what, it's part of the
Yeah,
open space and a 3-acre pond will be built. It's just whether we want to invest in a 5-acre pond.
Okay, so I would recommend that the city take areas 1 through 6, but I would also recommend that the HOA take on the areas along Green Farm Way from the courtyard until you get to the first open space area. I don't remember what that road is called.
Isn't it their current HOA area? There's no change in that, is there?
That, I don't think that's an HOA area, is it?
Right now, right now, yes, but we're maintaining it as a developer / HOA. Yeah. You're talking about the one with the trails through, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of see outlined. Yeah, that's right. It is currently maintained by the HOA. I can double check.
I mean, to me, it's open space, and that's why I would recommend that the city take it on, because it's open space and it connects to area number 2. It's this and this. So there's a water feature, I think, here, and there's another trail that goes through here.
There's planters with trees, yeah.
So are we talking about a motion just to say we're accepting these, not necessarily exact wording of the MDA?
Well, that whether or not you want the city to take it on so that we can
Right.
draft it to put into the
MDA that we're not approving
the
right now.
amendment. We need to know what you want.
How does the council feel about that? I mean, let's just get that out of the way real quick. Is the council in favor of taking over that area? The open space?
I am not in favor.
You would prefer to have an HOA take over?
Yeah, those areas that he has the cursor on now? Yes.
Open space that that's in the amendment that we have here, or they?
So those, just so I'm clear, I'm a little confused right now. Those areas haven't been proposed for the city to take over in the past, is that correct? But Nina, you're saying you would like to take the?
I don't know if they have or not. I have not seen these areas listed on any map as far as that goes,
So-
other than, like,
There's
I know they
nothing-
exist.
There's nothing in the MDAs regarding
Okay.
that extra thing. The only thing that we have discussed is these 6 areas, but the MDA and the 2 amendments don't specifically outline the area that you're speaking of. They talk about
These 2.
Pocket parks and open space in the amount of 50 acres. It doesn't say.
That's not, oh, okay.
So what they're proposing right here on what's on the screen right now, that equals 50 acres.
And just to be clear, it wasn't that we didn't want the city to take it. It was just really an oversight on my part to not include that in the full package to discuss. So it's not really a recommendation one way or the other from us. It's
Right.
just we just didn't include it. So, and I'll take the responsibility for that.
Mayor, you may want to just take a poll of every council
I think
member.
that's best.
Because nobody,
We're in process.
nobody's wanting to make eye contact and
Well, I think we've got one from Councilmember Schwab that he wants to maintain it as a HOA.
just that one,
Just that
just
part,
that
I
one
think.
area, Councilmember
So-
Swap?
Yes, those 2 little corners that are already landscaped and have been for some time, that's not a part of any area of 1 through 6.
Okay.
That should remain HOA in my
So
opinion.
let's take that off the table, that area off on the 1 through 6. What direction do you want to go on that?
I am in favor of taking 1 through 6 as city property
Okay,
after it is all complete and signed off.
okay, thank you. Is there other council members that feel the same or different?
I feel the same.
Same.
Sounds like we're in agreement.
Okay,
Go for
Okay.
it, Nina. Make it.
So
Well, I
that,
made my motion, so someone else has to make theirs.
But that's what I
Mine
was
is
asking.
different,
so there,
and I'll
We're
make the
just
same one.
saying we're going to accept these, but not exactly the language. That might change a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we're gonna have to meet with Nielsen Homes over whether or not they're willing to do like an escrow or what to deal with like deadlines and what the penalty would be and or those sort of things. But we needed to know, do you want to take them as, because that's, if you look at the agreement, that's in one of the shaded areas on page 3, is that we had to figure out that specific thing.
so legal counsel, I would recommend that you help us to draft this and so that we can approve and move forward with it the way it would be best for legal.
I would suggest that someone make a motion that that the city accept the dedication of areas 1 through 6 once they're completed and the
Dedicated.
what was
Completed
that?
and dedicated.
Yeah, completed and dedicated, that the
So
city
moved.
accept those. Okay.
Okay, and what about the pond and the, as
Well,
part
That's
of this?
1 through 6.
Have a vote on
We
that?
need to
Yeah,
separate that.
separate that just so that we can,
Okay, so let's take that motion, let's try and simplify this, this is getting a little complicated. So let's take that motion, and council.
so,
if you
So
can-
Kim made a motion, so now we just need a second.
Emily, did you get that? All that? Okay.
Thank you.
Good job, Em.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? I hate to ask. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it sounds like it's unanimous. So that part's taken care of.
So the next thing I would suggest to simplify things is have a discussion on what size you want the pond. Do you want it 3 acres or do you want it 5 acres?
And does that have to be done tonight?
You don't have to do it tonight.
Well, what are we going to use park impact fees if we don't use that extra?
agree
Make
with
it 5
that.
acres. I mean, I don't have a problem expanding that if we're going to use those and we didn't need them somewhere else. I don't know what your intention was with those impact fees.
Well, it's whatever the council's intention is. It's
All
to-
right. Well, you have your ideas. You knew
Yes.
what the amount was. We didn't know that.
Well,
So-
from the last financial statement that's been sent out, we have $315,000 in Green Farms Park impact fees.
Okay.
We also have $36,000 in stormwater impact fees, specifically designated infrastructure for the Green Farm. These amounts will grow because we do have several parcels, Parcel C, Parcel A, which are high density, which means we get the same amount of park impact fee as some of the larger lots in the other parcels. So we anticipate this to grow into almost the $1 million mark for park impact fees. So we don't have it all in hand right now, but over the next 2 or 3 years, we will have those monies secured. In that case, a $500,000 to $800,000 investment in the ponds is coverable. We can use both the stormwater impact fees for that because the pond acts as a stormwater. But between the two, we might have to dip into some of our other capital funds, particularly the community center. While I'm comfortable going with park impact fee, the Green Farm park impact fees for the community center, I'm not sure if I could legally go into the general park impact fees for the community center because it's not listed in our plan for that. So we might have to tap into a little bit of our capital reserve fund for those.
Could we amend our facilities like we did with the gymnasium?
Unfortunately, community centers are a bit sticky. That's not generally one that's good for parks and recreation. That's one of the messages we got from during our last amendment.
What are the thoughts on the pond from the council?
What was the amount again for the pond?
The amount that we're looking at currently in the MDA is that the cost will not exceed $2 million. What Nielsen Homes is asking for is a 60-40 split. So the city would cover 40% of the cost of the pond.
If it's
improvements.
the
So we're
larger.
looking at up to $800,000. I would like to say I'm going to arm wrestle with Jake and Brian and we get that cost down. I think, quite honestly, I think that's a little bit of fluff to make sure. Other costs we've had are a little bit lower, but it's going to be an investment. Also, if we can get that approved and get it designed by December, we can pursue outside grants that have been very friendly to such amenities.
So that 800,000 is just for the 3 acre.
No.
No.
Addition?
So we will not have any investment on the 3 acre. The 800,000 is to increase it to a 5-acre pond.
And we're required by the current MDA to put in a 3-acre pond.
Right,
So
right.
I think we need our boat back.
that's what I was
You
thinking.
know, not to make fun of things that are 50 years old, because that would include me, but I don't know if I'd trust a 50-year-old boat for too long.
All
So.
right. Little duct tape, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, how does the council feel at this point? 3 or 5?
I'm in favor.
Could I ask that you stop sharing screen? It's hard for me to see your
sorry.
faces, and I don't want to overspeak anybody. It's kind of hard to judge when you're about to speak. But for me, I don't know if I'm comfortable with the 60-40 split as far as if we commit to a 5-acre pond. I want to have a hard number that we're committing to and no more, and Nelson picks up the rest. If they say costs come back at the time they decide to start working on this, and it's $3 million for 5 now, and we're now, I just want a firm number if we're going to approve the additional 2 acres, which I am in favor of.
It can't be, if it came back and it was 3 million, they'd have to pick up that additional money, because it would be that it could not exceed 2 million, and so our cost would be 800.
We could do the amendment so we could say 60-40 up to 2 million, and then we have a hard cost for the city not to exceed.
Yeah, that's similar to kind of what we talked about with the community center, because the cap is at 550. So, be kind of in that.
So the 800,000, is that for the city to acquire the additional 2 acres, or is the 2 acres always going to be open space, whether it's pond or not pond? How does that $800,000 equate? Is that just excavation?
It's excavation improvements.
Portions of landscaping, running, power out there. Yeah, power, street lights, sod, boulders, As you start, adding them up, they do add up quick. Again, we would be motivated, just like you would, to keep the cost down because we're covering 60% of it. So we would obviously do everything we could to make sure we provided a really nice amenity, but kept costs down. But again, yeah, that is kind of all the things that would potentially be included.
And there's also the construction of all trails and parking lots. So there's some stuff in there too, Councilmember Swap.
Did you have a drawing in one of those slideshows for what you proposed for the 5-acre and showing the landscape and the parking lot stalls and the lights?
So we don't have that yet. No, it was on the conceptual plan to show how big the pond would be, but we haven't gone full bore on that design yet because we wanted to just get a better idea for where the city was at. If you need that before making a determination, we're happy to kind of embark on that. We wouldn't go as deep as we maybe would otherwise before a commute, but we definitely would be open to looking into that. So
I would ask. Oh, sorry, Councilman.
I'm sorry. It's so hard with the delay here. I apologize.
Yeah. I was just going to say, if you were to increase it to, whether we increase it or not, I just asked if Nelson could consider moving the design submittal to the 1st of December. I know that's taken away a month, but that allows us to do our grants, get the grants pulled together and submit in January.
Yeah, we'll talk with our engineers and make sure they're comfortable with that. But if that would help the city, then we'll try to accommodate.
So I'm not sure where we're at, but
back to the council.
Good with 5 acres.
I like the idea of having, if we're gonna do it, I think I like the idea of doing it right and making it a little bit bigger and nicer for the residents. So if we have impact fees that we can use for it, it would be nice to see a more definite cost. I'm definitely in agreement with Councilmember Swap on that.
We got a couple. Any others?
Oh, I agree too. If we don't have the water, we're going to mow it. So let's have water.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with it too.
There we go. So we're looking at a 5 at this point.
All right. So somebody make a motion that the city wants to proceed with a 5-acre pond.
So
Does that financially commit us if we say that?
No,
without
we
seeing the
haven't-
cost?
No, because we haven't
approve it.
finished the amendment yet, but that gives us a direction to go so that we can move forward with how to finish drafting the amendment with, costs. I mean, we can change the language regarding the 2 million so that it it's only a 60-40 split of the 2 million, and if it exceeds that, that's their responsibility for that.
We'll make it up in fishing licenses we sell to the green farms. So we have that. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Perfect. Okay. Looks like that passed as well. Next.
So now you need to talk about the Silo Park as to how you want to proceed with Silo Park. Whether or not you want to just have them build what is outlined in the MDA, or whether or not you want to have them, go in with a partnership and a construction cost cap of $550, each pay 50/50, and do what they have outlined with the that building, and that. So that's what you need to make.
Our cap is 550,000.
The cap is 550.
And where does that money come from?
So our portion of it would be 275. So
Oh.
it's a 50-50 split with a cap of 550. So our portion, this could also come from the Green Farms Park Impact Fee. We do have a very healthy capital improvement item. I would assume that we'd use as much of the Green Farm Impact Fee that we could. This is also another one where we can submit for grants in January. And this one, we would have, I forget, I didn't have, are we going to have concepts by then?
No, we would need to ask to see if you guys could have final construction plans December 1st.
Actually, preliminary design is this summer. So as long as we have preliminary design with financials, maybe something a little bit more than what we have right now, I think that could be enough to submit.
I would agree with that. I think that just knowing from other communities and how much they rent their community center, that some of that cost will be offset. So I think it would be a great addition to the city.
One thing just to point out, and if I could have Brock just step up with Jake for a second. We've talked about this community center. We realize that this one would be a smaller option compared to a potentially larger one that we'd also be submitting here right next door. One of the things we talked about was how many Roy has and how in high demand they are. You're a resident of Roy, but you've also seen those uses. So could you just address that for the council?
Yeah, they have multiple facilities. They have one below City Hall. They have the Hope Center. They have a facility at their rec center, well, their Parks and Recreation office. They also have one at their former Parks and Recreation office. So they have 4 that are pretty consistently utilized by residents, groups. I mean, you know who's reserving those. But they have 4 of them. They just expanded their City Hall down below, and there's a pretty nice place there.
What size are we looking at on this proposed one if we were doing the cost sharing?
The square footage? Yeah, we originally talked about 2,400 square feet. This concept is right around 3,000, so somewhere in that range.
And that's outlined on Exhibit E.
I guess what would be in it, or?
Yeah, so it would have it would be fully heated and air conditioned. It would have a warming kitchen. Our designers have actually done a really good job, in my opinion, making it really functional on the inside, but also you can open up the side doors to utilize kind of the patio space as well. So you could spill out that way. You could have a reception line or whatnot. So there would be restrooms as well, and then kind of some storage. So yeah, there's a great picture of the floor plan, how we have it designed right now. And yeah, you can kind of see the doors there that would open out to the patios. But you can see also on I think it's maybe the next 1 or 2, you can see kind of the conceptual site layout. So one of the next 2 slides, let's see, yeah, the one previous. So you can kind of see how it would spill out both ways and then to the back. So that's kind of what we had envisioned.
We would also have to, according to our discussions we've had, is the loafer shed, the red one, that would be plumbed for restrooms, outside restrooms, but we would have to cover the costs on that.
Well, and I think that would be great with the pickleball courts right there. I think that would be.
Well, we need,
And if you notice, the community center has restrooms access from the outdoors, that you could secure the indoor access. So these could be used for both in the meantime. Or if we wanted to separate the community center from the pickleball ones, we'd do separate restrooms in that other shed.
and other options that would just be an expense to the city. So, what other questions? Do you have any other questions?
What is the architectural features of the inside of this? I mean, are we going to see a full set of architectural drawings before this kicks off?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd be happy to submit that before we, obviously start construction. But yeah, we can work to, I mean, the way we had kind of envisioned it was, kind of a concrete slab that would either be painted nicely or whatever. And then it would be nice enough, a nice enough finish on the inside that you'd want, receptions there or whatnot. So we haven't nailed down exactly what that looks like, but we'd be happy to provide that for feedback before. And a lot of that's going to depend on, where the budget does end up landing. If we decide and we want to spend a little more and we have room in the budget, we could definitely talk about that. But if we're capped out and we feel like, that's as far as we want to go, then I think that'll be a good discussion for future, for sure.
Who would be the builder on that?
We would. Yep.
I figured.
Never know. Some people, yeah. I mean, sometimes you outsource stuff like that, but yeah, we would plan on building it.
Any other questions?
I think my question is actually for the council. We've talked about this before. We've said that we need some sort of community center, and we've talked about putting one behind the building here, and I'm just not sure where we're at on that. Obviously, we need a community center somewhere, whether it's in Green Farms or whether it's behind the building. So I guess I would like to know where the council really wants a community center at. Or if a larger community center back here is feasible in the near future.
We have budgeted amounts in this year to get a concept design for a community center. It would not be this one. We are anticipating, and I've already reached out to a couple architects to kind of give us an RFP on that initial concept in order to have something to bring back to the council in October, November timeframe, work with you on that, and then have something that we could submit with the WACOG ramp grant cycle in January if we wanted to pursue it.
For me, I think that we can have two. I think it's a win-win to partner with Nielsen for this one, and then even it might not be as quickly as the one at Green Farms, but I think that sooner or later we're big enough that we're going to need two.
Thoughts?
I don't know.
I think those are all valid points. I'm a little bit concerned about, like, on your side of the city.
I know, but there's no place to build one on my side of the city, so.
We are looking at an amphitheater up in Prevedel.
Yes,
so.
we are looking at an amphitheater.
It feels like everything's
So
on
you get
this side.
campsites
And
over there.
We have
What more do
campsites
you
and
want?
an amphitheater.
they do have a cool
And
park.
we have restrooms. I mean, what more can we
here.
ask for? And the river.
But that is a valid point that you bring up.
Yeah, I just I
Amenities
wonder
spread
if
throughout the
if
city.
they would be more utilized, having two that are a little bit further apart. But
I think one of the issues that I would have with that is we have the land. It's accessible to the city building, and so if we were to look at someplace in the north side of the city, we would be talking about land purchase, which is going to be a huge cost. So
I agree with that. So I'm not 100% on this, but I'm not 100. I'm not opposed to it
You're
either.
50.
So I could go either way on it. Depends on if anyone in the council has strong feelings, I guess.
Matt, if we didn't use park impact fees on this, what would we use them on?
That's an interesting thing. I mean, you could always use it to add additional landscaping, different features, art pieces along the trail. Green Farm Plan and Nelson's Home Plan for this is going to be putting a lot of trees and everything along this area. So there's, as far as improvements on this, I don't think we'd really have a lot more items for it. So, this is where it could come involved, and where it could be adding more Boweries across that Nelson Home hasn't planned for along the trail, or little areas like that is conceivable. But these would be the two big items.
Okay, Carrie, you have to say what you feel.
You have to say something, Carrie.
I feel awkward. I don't know. I'm not sure that we need to at this point. I think it's better, more natural to have it here near the city building. If that's the land that we're looking at here, I don't know. We've already jumped in with the pond, right? So now we're going to make another investment with you guys, and you haven't pulled through yet. So I'm a little bit like, oh, do we want to make a joint venture in this when you haven't come through on your other ends? So I'm kind of struggling with that point for me personally.
And if it would make you feel comfortable, I mean, I don't know that we have to start right now. I mean, I don't know, maybe that'll make Amy shudder, but I don't know that we have to decide right now. I mean, we have our commitments that we have to deliver on, and that could be the kind of default backup. And if you guys decide, later on, you could, but just food for thought.
How about my suggestion is this? How about we leave this? I mean, my suggestion would be to bring this back in 2 weeks so that we can get it worked out regarding what penalty or what the escrow thing is like that. It'll give you a couple weeks to think about what you guys want to do regarding the Silo Park thing. We can leave it in the amendment, and you think about what you want to do from there. And then we need you to make a decision. Whether or not you want them just to do what's outlined in the MDA, or whether or not you want them, to move forward with the Silo Park.
And Mark Staples previously gave us a projection on the park impact fees. I didn't have those available for this meeting. Maybe that's something we could revisit with Jake and Brian and have that, so you can have it for sure. Here's exactly the park impact fees and the stormwater fees that are projected with the number of units we have in growth. They do have that information. I did not come to the meeting with that money, so I just have what's currently collected and what the trend is. So, okay.
Yeah, I think in our work meeting, that was just a little more revealing that we had those impact fees available. So it kind of changes some things too, and that's why probably it comes across as maybe we're a little not in shock, but we want to make sure we're making the right decisions with knowing that we had money that we could spend on that particular for impact fees with more clarification. So I would agree if we could do something like that. So council, if there's...
Yeah, we need to fix these other things, and so we can bring it back in 2 weeks, and you guys can make some decisions. And here's the deal. The decision that we're going to be asking you to make is that send it to the Planning Commission, because then you're going to have a public hearing. There could be things that we need to tweak or change after the public hearing at the Planning Commission level.
So Jake, you get to come back.
I'm excited. First time wasn't good enough for me.
Are you really excited?
Absolutely.
Really?
It wasn't like last time, so I'm excited to come back again. Hopefully
Might
it's
be
not like last
worse.
time again.
It's a public hearing.
That's true. It might be, but it's okay.
Just one thing for the council to ask, and I don't mean to seem like ramrodding this through. Do we want to wait for this final determination before we refer to the Planning Commission, or is there any interest in referring to it, and then we give a notice to the Planning Commission to alter that Silo Park before the public hearing is scheduled? Quite frankly, Nelson Home probably doesn't want to hear this, pushing it back to the first meeting in September probably is better for Planning Commission because we have a slew of public hearings scheduled for the second Planning Commission meeting for the open space issue throughout the city. But if we wanted to kind of get it on and not hold it up, but make corrections on the move, however the council would like to go.
Are you meaning not bring it back to us and bring it to
We would
them?
have discussions in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But they would get the process rolling, so we can just say, at the public hearing, this is the adjustment that the council's had for Silo Park. Everything else we'd have kind of battened down.
I'd be good with that.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts, Councilmember Swap?
Yes, I have a couple here. For one, I'm concerned committing to this without knowing the aesthetics of it, where we put a $500,000 cap on this, or whatever it was, 550. With the cost of materials and shortages and everything else, and I just don't want to commit to this and we get kind of a really basic community center. At the same time, I'm excited that we have impact fees to offset the cost and it's not coming directly out of our funds. I would also like to see that the developer portion of this be put into escrow as well, and just to kind of help, put your money where your mouth is to make sure that it all gets done.
Just a quick question on that, Councilmember Swap. On escrow, was it a $1-for-$1 match, or is it usually a portion from your experience?
I don't have experience in this. Like I said, I've only been doing this here now for 7 months, but what I'm concerned about is if the economy crashes and Nielsen decides to default on the subdivision, they're only liable for a very small amount under an LLC. So I just want to make sure that the monies do get put aside, however that's done legally. I assume it's an escrow for what their costs are to actually finish the open space areas, to finish this area. That way the residents and the city have confirmation that it's going to be taken care of no matter what the future brings.
Sherry just reminded me that because it'll be a semi-public use, it will be subject to the design requirements of a commercial building. If that helps make you, as far as materials go, like with the exterior, and when it comes to if they happen to declare bankruptcy, another developer would buy it and they would be subject to the MDA, which does require certain things, including installing what is outlined in the Second Amendment. So it wouldn't just, if they went bankrupt, the bankruptcy court would sell off the assets to another developer, and they would be under the same obligations that Nielsen Homes is. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better. Of course, I don't think that Nielsen Homes is probably in this market going to be going anywhere.
Yeah, I hope not.
I could be wrong though, but I mean, we can talk to them about like an escrow option being triggered, maybe at the time that, the concept is brought in, like in December or something like that. Because if we did that, then it would we'd have their money tied up for the landscaping, the hardscape, softscape, and then that would be completed in theory. And then this would be the next portion that they'd have to move forward, and maybe we have, some type of an escrow thing that goes into effect like the first of the year for this next portion. But that's something that would need to talk to Nielsen Homes about.
Okay. Any other discussion from the council?
No, just can you help us make a motion? It sounds like, unless I'm wrong, the council just needs more information on the.
I think you just table the issue. Just make a motion to table the amendment and that they bring it back in 2 weeks. We bring it back in 2 weeks for further discussion.
Which amendment are we tabling?
The whole amendment,
Okay.
right?
What was
We
that?
table the whole amendment?
Yeah, table the
Yeah.
whole amendment, because I think we're really close in being able to have just one amendment instead of having two. And that saves us money because then we only have to do one public hearing instead of two.
So the amendment that we're tabling the amendment, and then we'll get it back in 2 weeks with all of the changes that we made tonight on the table, if that helps
Yes.
make sense.
And then you guys will have to make some definite decisions regarding what you want to do about that silo park. But
Okay.
we're gonna leave the language in there that you're thinking of proceeding. We might need to, I might make the recommendation of putting the language in regarding that construction, those construction materials, just that it'll conform with our commercial. I mean, they have to anyway, that's not, but for added security, we put something in there regarding the materials. But I think that, is it, Councilmember Swap, is it the inside or the outside that you're concerned of, or is it both?
It's the inside. I think our ordinances cover the outside. This is our first community center. I think this is a good baby step for us to move forward and see how this one works. I just don't want it to be super plain, unfinished concrete floors and, we just slap some white paint on the wall because we hit our 550 mark. I just want to make sure it's done well before the city commits to that 275 match.
Well, maybe I can work with Nielsen Homes to see about crafting some language regarding the inside materials that would deal with that.
Materials and fixtures, appliances, yes, all that would be something I would like to see before we commit.
Okay. Are you?
I'm ready for a motion.
All right. I move that we table the action on the proposed amendment to the Green Farms Master Development Agreement in response to the notice of default.
And have it brought back in 2 weeks.
And have it brought back in 2 weeks.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Perfect. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on here. Item
Jake,
12.
you should tell Nielsen Homes to stop sending you here.
No, that's all right. I appreciate your time. I really do. And we look forward to good community. And you're done with me, right?
Thank you.
This time.
Thank you so
This
much. We
time.
appreciate you.
You
Thank
better run
Brian.
now.
Okay, and then we're getting down on numbers here. We should have given a prize away for the one that stayed the longest, but we'll move forward. Jeff. So we'll move on to item 12 on here. We'll have a discussion on Salt Point Master Development Report. And I'm not sure, are you doing that?
That would be me. I just wanted to provide, at our last meeting, resident Randy Hunter made some public comments on a concern he had with the Salt Point MDA. And we provided an update to the council via my weekly updates, but we just wanted to go on record. As Randy Hunter had relayed, there were discussions on the initial rezone of what would designate land for the Salt Point MDA, that there was an error made. And it looks like it was something that was done on the staff. It did not incorporate the amendment to the rezone ordinance that Randy Hunter made as a council member at the time. This is very concerning. And so, unfortunately, that was done with one owner. The MDA was done based on the unamended ordinance that was recorded, unfortunately. And that was done with another owner. And then a third owner purchased the property to do the residential. So unfortunately, because the council passed the MDA and approved other developments there, it becomes a legal quagmire for us to go and remedy that. It is, like I said, a concern. Our policies and procedures have been amended so that ordinances are not signed immediately after the meeting. Unfortunately, Mayor, when we talked personally, I was looking at a little outdated one. We did change that at the first of the year, so we have 24 hours to do that. But as Councilmember Morris and I met with Randy Hunter to discuss this issue, one of the things that we proposed is whenever there is a significant change to an ordinance that's being passed by the council, particularly with zoning or anything, that we provide a copy of the ordinance that's actually recorded at the next meeting so that the council can be assured that what they discussed while the memory is still fresh, or at least 2 weeks fresh, that and as you're comparing it to the minutes, that you know fully assured that what is being recorded in as law is what you had discussed. That would actually also give us anything development-wise or enforcement-wise hasn't really gone into effect by then generally. And so this just gives the council a little check and balance, particularly on staff. I apologize for the staff and those involved at the time. Unfortunately, fortunately, none of the staff that are here now were involved in that. But it is very concerning, and we want to make sure that what the will of the council is what's reflected in law. And so that's our commitment on there. Met with Mr. Hunter, and that's something that we will be committed to make sure that things don't go astray in the future.
Matt, can I ask a question? So if we have an MDA for a certain property, and you might have already answered this, but I missed it, and it's sold to another property, how does that pass through?
Yeah, there's a successor clause in most of the MDAs, and there needs to be notification. Generally, it doesn't.
And it's recorded. It's
Yes.
recorded with the property.
But
so it's attached to the property.
We didn't make that distinction?
But usually that just requires notification, not approval by the city. When you're talking about leases and everything, usually there's notification and approval by the landlord. But since there's property rights invested in the owner of it, they can transfer those responsibility and rights, similar to how Amy mentioned if Nilsen Homes went bankrupt, the successor would still have to honor that agreement. And so that's where, I'd love to be able to switch back to kind of a landlord rule where it's contingent upon our approval, but that's generally not the case as long as they're willing to continue to uphold the standards and the requirements of the MDA.
So just so that one of the things that I put in that staff letter regarding the rezone stuff was that Sherry and I are currently working on a development agreement template so that it covers stuff like this. It covers how to deal with defaults. It covers, and we have very standard language so that, because if you've noticed, some of the MDAs are one way, some of the MDAs are another, there's missing pieces. But if we decide to move forward, we would have a template that the developers have to use our template. They don't get to use their template. But that's something that we would take through the planning commission, then bring it to you guys too, to if there's any suggestions or anything else that would go into that.
Specifying penalties for breach.
Yeah, or anything else that, different things that, it's like with this sort of notice thing that they have to provide notice if there's going to be a sale.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add that I think this is a great example of how just a regular old resident can have such a great impact on the city. So
She called
thank
you old, Randy.
OLE, or OL. So thank you, Citizen Randy Hunter, for bringing this to the council of the city. I know he's not.
Okay, thank you. I hope everything is satisfied on that, so appreciate you bringing that forward. All right, we'll move on to the next item on here. Looks like we have item 13, action on resolution 21-2022 for agreement between West Haven City and Weber Basin Water for allotment of water for City Hall. I think in the last review that we had on this, there were some things that were requested on here. I don't know if those items came up, if you were able to get us a deed, water shares and so forth.
Yes. So staff have been researching this item since then to answer some of the questions brought up by the council. We have three things that we have verified as we went through the area. We have looked at the water shares that we own for the area since we incorporated in 91. The city has acquired 78.5 shares of the Wilson Water Company. We retain 77.5 of those. We've only transferred or sold one of those, and that was in conjunction with the development of the country park at the time. One share was transferred, and the others were given to us by credit. So that just kind of sets the precedence where last summer, when we set up this development agreement with Weber Basin for the country park, for our Kenneth Baldwin Country Park, we didn't have to transfer any water shares because they had those on hand, and the agreement for the connection was solidified through that. We were just writing the development agreement for a secondary connection. Because of that development, they realized that the City Hall had never had that development agreement put in place. As we look through it, we've confirmed that we received 20 water shares with the exchange from the school. We still retain the school property when we swap this property for where the elementary is. We retain all 20 of those water shares. So there's been none of those transferred for the developments of this.
Is that in addition to the 78.5?
That's included in the 70.
I think it was 24, wasn't
Just 20 on that. And so when we looked at that, we also, the mayor had asked us to look at a warranty deed. I have copies of these, or a deed, transfer title and such. I have copies of the warranty deed. Unfortunately, they don't go into much notification as far as the offer and valuable consideration. It's pretty minimal, but it does show that the transfer of just directly property and no water shares or anything, and no agreements with the with Weber Basin. I've also confirmed with Weber Basin that they have no record of our connection, and as such, quite literally, the City Hall has an illegal connection to pressurized irrigation. I won't guess how that happened 17 years ago, but it just happened, and so this corrects it. One thing, just to let you know, we look into this, and I'm going to share. This is the map that's set up for this agreement. One of the things as they talked about is we actually have 11.43 acres, and when Steve Anderson and when this first came through, he says, well, we aren't really developing all of the 11.43 acres. We just want to take care of what's currently developed. And so that's 4.82 acres. When any developer comes in, the rate for developing per acre is $3,100. And so that connection fee to hook in is based on the developer. So Green Farms, when they hooked in, they had to pay $3,100 per acre. And so that's what's being required of us at this time. The additional amount, the $1,000 whatnot, is for the irrigable area, which is
Say
7.
that again?
Irrigable. Not irritable, but irrigable. And that is, as you can see down here, the irrigation area is 76,000 square feet. And so that's the annual allotment that we will have to pay for that, on top of any additional over-the-top usage. As you develop and as you bring the property into connection, you transfer more or less your flood irrigation rights to Weber Basin for the pressurized irrigation rights. And that's what the requirement of the 2 Wilson shares is, so that we can have water. So in effect, we've had 17 years of irrigation for free. There's no meter on our connection. They'll be correcting that. And so they're asking us to pay as if we developed it today. They actually could chase us and get several years in arrears, right, which could be anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000, or take criminal proceedings against us for illegal water tap. They just want to set it up, have us go forward, and so they're asking for the breakdown of of the $16,000, which includes the water development fee for 4.82 acres, the first year assessment of $1,200, and then the inspection fee of $150. And so that's the breakdown of where that $16,000 comes from. And as you can tell from this map, if we wanted to develop and have irrigation elsewhere on this property, there would be some additional connections. And so we'd have to cross that bridge when we put a community center or fire station, police station, whatever we do in the future.
As a council, what's your thoughts? This was brought before us in the, I guess, last time we met. I'm not sure when we received all this information and why it wasn't probably put into because we got exactly the same thing as we had before. We didn't really have a staff report updating any of this information, so I think that made it hard for me to review that and just to capture all the things that you just talked about in just a few seconds there, a few minutes. Council, do you have any questions?
I think I had my questions. I was the one that questioned the amount, so I understand that now.
Do you feel comfortable with the agreement, Amy?
Yes, it's the same one that we signed before. And
Okay.
It's pretty standard.
Okay.
We haven't had any negotiations, though, really discussion about costs and everything with Weber Basin at this point. I mean, they sent over the directive for us to take care of with water shares and with costs to catch up on things where it stands today. Has there been any other discussions with them at all in negotiating that?
Well, the previous negotiations were that we reduced the amount that we were going to be paying. If we did for the full 11 acres, it would be a $36,000 fee, and they are waiving any past amounts. Technically, they could chase us for 7 years of past due and turn off our water.
Well,
we're not in a good position.
Technically, they could do that, but they're just as at fault as we are in review of that. They've allowed it to go on for this long. It's not just
But
us.
that doesn't waive their right to be able to come after us for it.
Well, it seems awful odd that, at this point in time, we've had all these years of water and they've allowed the water to come on to the property. But that's kind of where we stand. I just wanted to make sure that I kind of wish we'd have had this information a little bit earlier to decide on this, but it's up to the council direction on what you want to do.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve action on Resolution 21-2022 agreement between West Haven City and Weber Basin Water for allotment of water for City Hall.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Oh, this is a resolution. We're going to do a roll call on this. So, Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Councilmember Call.
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab.
Aye.
Okay, we've got it approved. So, very good. So we'll take care of that and get that paid off. The next item on here is for a bid award, item 14, a bid award for 2022 road maintenance project, Schedule A chip seal. I think we got a copy of that on here.
We do.
Everybody get a chance to review that?
Yeah.
I would move to award the bid for the 2022 road maintenance project, schedule a chip seal to Staker Parsons Company in the amount of $130,575.10.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes and carries. Thank you. Next item on here is we'll move to item 15 is our executive session. The council will consider a motion to enter into a closed meeting for the purpose and strategy session to discuss the character and professional competence of an individual to be held in accordance with the provisions of Utah Code 52-4-205. And so I'm ready for a motion.
So moved.
Before you guys go forward with that, I think it actually needs to be a roll call for the bid award.
Because of the money amount?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought
Okay.
too.
We'll back up. That's okay. We'll back up on that. So we'll go back to the bid award for Staker Parsons for $575.10, and we'll do a roll call on that particular one. Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon,
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders,
Aye.
and Councilmember Schwab.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries even more solid this time. Excellent, thanks. And then we'll move on to the executive session as described from before. I'm ready for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move into our executive session. Thank you.